The hour of 6:30 having arrived, I will ask the alders to take their seats, and I will call to order the Common Council meeting of Tuesday, June 6, 2023, and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Alder Evers. Here. Alder Evers is present. Alder Field. Here. Alder Field is present. Vice President Figueroa Cole. Here. Vice President Figueroa Cole is present. Alder Govindarajan. Govindarajan, my apologies. Alder Govindarajan is here. Alder Harrington McKinney is excused. Alder Knox. Alder Knox is present. Alder Latimer Burris. Alder Latimer Burris is present. Alder Madison. Here. Alder Madison is present. Alder Martinez Rutherford. Present. Alder Martinez Rutherford is present. Alder Mayadzi. Present. Alder Mayadzi is present. Alder Rummel. Present. Alder Rummel is present. Alder Slack. Alder Slack is present. Alder Tischler. Alder Tischler is present. Alder Vivier. Here. Alder Vivier is present. Alder Vidavir. Present. Alder Vidavir is present. Alder Wahelier. Here. Alder Wahelier is present. Alder Bennett. Here. Alder Bennett is present. Alder Conklin. Present. Alder Conklin is present. President Curry. Here. President Curry is present. Alder Duncan. Present. Alder Duncan is present. Madam Mayor, we have quorum.
Thank you. We'll start tonight's meeting with a presentation from our poet laureate. And I'll invite her to come up to the podium to introduce our poetry reading tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, Common Council. It's my pleasure to introduce Ron Serwin. Ron is the author of 2 chapbooks, A Little Rain, A Little More, and both published by Bent Paddle Press. His poems have appeared in a number of print and online journals. His poem, Where We Stand, was included in the anthology Sheltering with Poems, Community and Connection During COVID, published in 2021. Ron is the owner of Avals Books, LLC, which sells used and out-of-print books on the internet. He is a former president of the Council for Wisconsin Writers and currently volunteers at the Arts and Literature Laboratory in Madison. Please welcome Ron Serwin.
Thank you, Angie, and thank you to the Mayor and the Common Council for making this type of opportunity available. How many people, by a show of hands, remember an old board game called Sorry? Okay, quite a few people. The title of that game was part of the influence for this poem. Sorry. Sorry is the name of a game. Sorry for stating the obvious. Sorry for disappointing you. Sorry for the pain I caused. Sorry for not telling you before you died. Sorry things got out of hand. Sorry, that's not how it happened. Sorry for not being a better listener. Sorry, what did you say? Sorry for being so predictable. Sorry if I'm repeating myself. Sorry if I'm repeating myself. Sorry you didn't understand me the first time. Sorry about that president. Sorry is the name of a game. Sorry we gave up. Sorry we never tried. Sorry for challenging your sense of entitlement. Sorry you're poor. Sorry you're lazy. Sorry you're out of work. Sorry you people aren't welcome here. Sorry for saying you people. Sorry you must have me confused with someone else. Sorry I spoke too soon. Sorry I didn't speak sooner. Sorry I didn't give you enough attention. Sorry I have to go. Sorry I should have warned you. Sorry is the name of a game. Sorry your team lost. Sorry you are not a team player. Sorry you lost your savings. Sorry you're in a nursing home. Sorry you don't remember. Sorry you feel like that. Sorry you can't feel anything. Sorry I'm in your way. Sorry you can't stay. Sorry you can never tell anyone no. Sorry you're so negative. Sorry you can't tell when I'm joking. Sorry this is not funny. Sorry is the name of a game. Sorry about keeping you waiting. Sorry, nothing lasts forever. Sorry about the forever chemicals. Sorry they cheated. Sorry they got caught. Sorry you're under arrest. Sorry you can't afford an attorney. Sorry that book is banned. Sorry that gun is not. Sorry we bombed your school. Sorry we bombed your hospital. Sorry we bombed your wedding. Sorry, I don't understand. Sorry is the name of a game. Sorry, that's not covered by the warranty. Sorry for not calling. Sorry for not answering. Sorry, that number is no longer in service. Sorry, we don't take cash. Sorry, that register is closed. Sorry, you're in the wrong line. Sorry if you expected this to rhyme. Sorry, you're here. Sorry, our editors did not feel that your submission was right for us. Sorry for bothering you. Sorry, that's my seat. Lo siento, no hablo inglés. Sorry is the name of a game. Sorry, I don't work here. Sorry, where am I? Sorry, I don't love you. Sorry, have we met? Sorry, I can't sing. Sorry, I can't dance. Sorry, I'm not here to entertain you. Sorry, that's now how we do things here. Sorry, that's not the right answer. Sorry, I'm not good at math. Sorry for taking up so much of your time. Sorry, this wasn't longer. Sorry, I'm not at liberty to say. Sorry, is just a word. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks also to Angie Trudell Vasquez, who was our poet laureate, who always brings us these poems, but also brings poetry to our community. Thank you, Angie. All right, our next item is an honoring resolution, Legistar 78151, recognizing and commemorating June 19th, 2023 as Juneteenth in Madison, Wisconsin. We'll start the reading with Alder Latimer Burris.
Thank you, Mayor. Recognizing and commemorating June 19th, 2023 as Juneteenth in Madison, Wisconsin. Whereas June 19th, 2023 marks the 158th commemoration of Juneteenth, and whereas Juneteenth or June 19th is Freedom Day. And whereas this day not only celebrates the freedom, but honors and punctuates the crest for the civil liberty of freedom. Whereas Juneteenth, at its genesis, symbolically commemorates the end of slavery in America and the beginning of the road to freedom for Black people, which is foundation for freedom for all.
Whereas a contradiction existed between the American ideals of liberty and equality, and whereas in 1865, after the Civil War, the institution of slavery remained in effect, with many citizens choosing to ignore the Emancipation Proclamation, an executive order for freedom and justice, signed into law nearly 2.5 years prior to June 19, 1865. And whereas the plantation owners, business owners who owned enslaved people, forced by birth and or captivity as unpaid laborers, and involuntary servants in involuntary slavery from birth to death for generations, worked to further suppress the proclamation. And whereas on June 19, 1865, under the direction of the United States government, led by General Gordon Granger, the United by States Colored Troops, numbers 29 and 31, and a cavalry of 1,800 plus troops arrived in Galveston, Texas, the last city in the United States to receive formal news. And whereas the troops who were charged with enforcement of the Emancipation Proclamation advised the community as a whole that all are free and that they had been freed by the proclamation 2.5 years prior, that under the ratification of the 13th Amendment, slavery and involuntary servitude was unconstitutional and banned in all U.S. territories. And
whereas June 19th observes and celebrates started in Texas in 1865, and whereas June 19th became the official 11th United States federal holiday, and when President Biden signed Juneteenth into law after the Juneteenth Independence Day Act bill was signed in both houses of the United States Congress in 2021. And whereas the state of Wisconsin first recognized Juneteenth as a state holiday in 2009, and whereas it recognized that celebration of Juneteenth, the advocacy and the historical contents of the path of Juneteenth becoming the 11th national holiday, has roots connected directly in Madison and Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And whereas we applaud the dedication it took to make Juneteenth a national holiday and honor the efforts delivered by Dr. Oprah Lee, the grandmother of Juneteenth, who at 89, after nearly 45 years of direct advocacy and 80 years of engaging communities after Juneteenth and human rights issues, began a national walk to raise awareness and later stood at 95 holding hands with United States President Harris and the United States President Joe Biden, signing Juneteenth into law, a historical moment. And
whereas we recognize that Lee, who was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for her efforts and who is first cousin to Madison's own Malala Yousafzai Anana, found support in a cause to walk in Wisconsin during her 1,400-mile walk to D.C. to deliver the more than 3 million signatures Lee collected as part of her collective journey to make Juneteenth a federal holiday. And whereas it is further recognized that Lee worked directly and in conjunction with Dr. Ronald Myers, Doc Myers, a jazz-playing Baptist preaching minister who was raised in Milwaukee and graduated from medical school at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And whereas Doc Myers also spent his life advocating for basic human rights and dedicated his time to helping launch the National Juneteenth Holiday Campaign, and whereas in conjunction with the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation, passed Juneteenth bills in 46 out of 50 states before it became a national holiday and before his untimely death in 2018.
And whereas Madison Juneteenth was first celebrated, planned, and celebrated community-wide in Madison in 1989, specifically led by Madison leaders Annie Witherby Flowers and Mona Adams Winston, who also worked in conjunction with National Juneteenth leadership and cherished the hometown connection. And whereas through self-determination and collective collaboration and responsibility over the years, a group of local community leaders, including Witherby Flowers, Adams Winston, Diane Winfrey, Isidore and Cheryl Knox, Ed Holmes, Rick Flowers, John and Mona Winston, Fran Hill, Rose Johnson, Umoja, Nehemiah Community Development Corporation, and others partnering with the Madison Inner Cities Council, finally formalized its efforts in 2006 to create a yearly Juneteenth program through Kujichagulia Madison Center for Self-Determination. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City of Madison and the Madison Common Council recognize that Juneteenth is Freedom Day as it stands as a marker of freedom for all in the United States and makes time for us to honor those who have worked in community, committing to engaging in actions and initiatives promoting freedom, including the never-ending work of social justice. And Mayor?
And be it further resolved that the official Juneteenth flag was raised on June 6, 2023, representing a new beginning, the colors red, white, and blue, representing all Americans who cherish and stand for freedom, and promises that lay ahead when we stand for, fight for, recognize, honor the struggle it has taken to gain freedom for all, and increase our will to protect it. And be it finally resolved that the Madison Common Council and Mayor recognize and commemorate Juneteenth, June 19, 2023, and further recognize the efforts put forth by those to bring awareness of this important day as we work toward a more just society and reflective past. We will take that as being moved by Alder Latimer Burris and seconded by Alder Bennett, and that is the substitute that we are moving. We do have one registrant wishing to speak. We have Colin Gillis from District 12 wishing to speak.
Hi, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Common Council. I'm here today because I'm a nurse and I'm a proud member of my union. I'm also a proud resident of District 12, where I'm represented by Alder Amani Latimer Burris. If the 4th of July celebrates our independence, Juneteenth celebrates our freedom. That we need 2 holidays for independence and freedom serves as an important reminder that our freedom did not follow directly from our independence, that it was something we had to fight for and continue to fight for. When I learned that Alder Burris worked directly with Dr. Opal Lee, the woman who made it her life's mission to get Juneteenth recognized as a federal holiday, I reached out to her right away. My union, SEIU Wisconsin and UW Nurses United, won a form of recognition last fall after threatening to go on strike, where we now have regular meetings with our administration. And our first proposal to that administration was that they make Juneteenth a paid holiday. This was our first priority because we realize that the fight for racial justice and the fight for worker justice, these 2 fights are inextricably intertwined. In the spirit of the resolution honoring Juneteenth that you just read so beautifully, and in the recognition that American freedom is still an incomplete project, Alder Burris and Alder Rummel and I have started drafting a resolution about Juneteenth and labor. And I greatly look forward to working with you all and the EDC in the coming weeks on that resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. The substitute has been moved and seconded. Alder Latimer Burris.
Yes, I would like to, if it does pass, we do have Miss Flowers, Weatherby Flowers here. That is, I want you guys to know, I need to say this, so I wrote a couple of notes here. This is near and dear to me. And it's what I did, it's near and dear to me, but not because it's what I did before I landed here in City Council. It's because I was so blessed to have been a reporter or a visualizer or a fly in the room for a moment, and to be privy to have a front row seat as a spectator within my own family, within my own community, and my own life. A spectator to history and how it happened to come about and the players involved all the way up to the White House. I know how the bill landed on the desk. And that gave me a deep understanding of the impact of Juneteenth, the impact of what is really about freedom. So I'm going to speed through because I don't want to get cut off, but the key players to these things happening are either in my family or people who my family knows personally, or people who worked in community tirelessly for decades. And it's people that are sitting in this room like Isadore Knox and Annie Weatherby right over there. They connected with Opal Lee. They connected with Doc Myers. And we have to be able to tell our story of history, because this change came about in a way that we do it not only as Black people, but as Americans in American history. Black history is foundational to American history. It is a history that is a fight for freedom. And you have no other fights after Juneteenth that were not influenced by this history. So the process started in 1865 and got completed in 2021. And it was done in community, how we do it. And so what I got privy to when I was sitting there, and over time, and I started connecting all the dots, and I started to say, Isadore, do you know Dr. Yeah, I went to school with them. Yeah. And Annie tells me things, and Mona tells me things that she was called, and Opal Lee says, I know, Doc. I realized that I had a moment in time, just like the Emancipation Proclamation, where there's all these people that were working on things, and I get to document it and make sure it never leaves. So let me just say this in closing. They did their work in community unity, so that at this moment, it's not about the resolution, but it's about freedom. And though we will not appreciate it in our lifetime, I promise you, we will all be gone before it's really appreciated. Imagine that the kids are going to talk about things in America like race, economics, and freedom. They're going to talk about the things that the people that were enslaved wanted to be. Let me just read you a couple of them, see if it relates to anybody in this room. The freedom to be yourself, the freedom to participate in society and civic engagement, the freedom to own a house and property, the freedom to dress yourself and be yourself as you see yourself, the freedom to worship, to marry, to negotiate your living, right? I could go on. Education, history, all of these things, travel, right? To be elected, to recognize your history and the importance of it, to vote. And yet, what they didn't have, and the biggest freedom that we're still seeking for so many, is the right to fully participate in society as a citizen and to be protected and to have due process. Are we not fighting for the same things right now? That's why it's near and dear. So I thank you for the time, and I want to honor those that went ahead and did the work when nobody was looking, and maybe in 50 years, my name will get to hit the list that I did something. I said something, and I was something.
Thank you, Alder. Miss Annie?
Well, thank you, Amani. I was sitting here and I looked around the council chambers, and I've been a city employee for 34 years. But prior to that, when I would come in this room and I would see Uncle Izzy, before him, Mr. Smith, were kind of it for people of color. And now to sit here in this room, to see the diversity of women of color represented here. And when we first started Juneteenth, and the conversation over lunch was about including and working to see that the African American community would be a more productive part of this total Madison community. And to see my Miss Sabrina, and to see Jael, and to see Amani, and see you, and to see you, Nikki, and to have worked in civil rights for 18 years most of those years. I was here under Reverend Wright. I was hired when Reverend Wright was the director. To see that the work that we've been doing over the years is not in vain. Because one of the first places I saw Sabrina do her poetry, and her spoken word was on the stage of Juneteenth. And when we think about, it used to be that the young people didn't want to have a basketball game out of town because they had to buy their outfit for Juneteenth. We used to be it for what represented the collective common good of all of us. And so I stand here in awe. I stand here with tears in my eyes to see that this Common Council room is so different from 1989 and the summer of 1990 when we had our first Juneteenth. And so we all stand on the shoulders of the slaves. The civil rights, the Frederick Douglass's runaway slave, to a constitution that was built for white male landowners, that we can look around this room and see that that's not the case. And that if I ever leave a legacy, is that legacy that we are all Americans. I went to Spain and Italy, first time I ever left before Juneteenth, And I was sharing with someone that me and my sister wouldn't buy from a group of Africans that were selling things. And for the first time, I had some people who looked like me to call me, to say to me, F, you MF Americans. But it was the first time that anybody ever just seen me as an American. So I want that for my biracial grandchildren, that they are Americans, because our ancestors built America. The civil rights is what all the other rights stand on. Gay rights, marriage, all of that stands on the civil rights of those slave people who died, who former slaves, who paved this way so that we could all be sitting here today. And so that is the true legacy of Juneteenth. And that's why our theme is Harambe. Let's pull together and let's continue to pull together so that our community will be what our kids can really benefit and enjoy. So thank you with this honor, and God bless. Thank you.
Isidore Knox was one of the first people to respond to the call.
Come right in the middle. We're going to stand informal while we take a picture here. Annie, come in the middle. There we go.
So we all have to try to reach your hands in to hold it together.
Yep, there you go. There you go.
Direct your energy towards somebody else. How about my
Yeah, of course. All right, one more photo. And then we're going to ask you to do the photos on the side after this.
This is like, you don't understand, our community is so tight. But, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Miss Annie. All right. So the substitute has been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Is there any objection to recording an enthusiastic unanimous vote in favor of item 2? Seeing no objection, we'll record that vote. And that will bring us to disclosures and recusals. Are there any disclosures or recusals from members of the body? Alder Verveer.
Thank you, Mayor. Please note me as recusing myself on agenda item 15, the alcohol license renewal for the Madison Elks Lodge, and agenda item number 52, the entertainment license renewal for Madison Elks Lodge, as I'm an officer of that organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Curry.
Thank you, Mayor. Please record me as recusing myself from agenda item 76, legislative file 77544, as I am a YWCA Madison employee.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Bennett.
Please note me as recusing myself from agenda item number 50, Legistar 77904. Please.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any further disclosures or recusals? Seeing none, we'll move on to the presentation of the consent agenda. President Curry?
A consent agenda is moved with recommended action listed for each item on the agenda, including public hearings, except 1, items which have registrants wishing to speak, and 2, items which alders have separated out for discussion debate purposes. This document lists agenda items with recommendations different from the agenda, items for exclusion, and items introduced from the floor. For agenda items excluded by 1 request of alders or speakers registered by 6:30 on June 6th. Agenda item 23, legislative file number 77186, an entertainment license for La Pollera Colombiana within Alder District 12, speakers registered. Agenda item 62, legislative file number 77792, approving plans and specifications for public improvements necessary for the project known as Hartmeyer Development, and authorizing construction to be undertaken by the developer, 12th Aldermanic District. Alder Latimer Burris requests it to be pulled, as well as speakers registered. Agenda item 90, legislative file number 76331, substitute, amending portions of section 9.23 of the Madison General Ordinances related to regulation of mobile home parks, requested by Alders Wahili and Alder Knox. Agenda item 92, legislative file number 77441, adopting the final report of the Task Force on Farmland Preservation, requested by Alders Slack and Latimer Burris, as well as having speakers registered. Agenda item 93, legislative file number 77479, accepting the report titled Comprehensive Plan 2023 Progress Update, requested to be pulled by myself and Alder Latimer Burris. Agenda item 94, legislative file number 77810, a resolution adopting a public participation plan for the City of Madison Comprehensive Plan interim update and authorizing the Planning Division to draft amendments to the text and maps in the 2018 Comprehensive Plan, requested by Alders Slack and Latimer Burris.
All right, are there any further requests for exclusion? Alder Knox.
Yes, item number 76.
Item number 76. Thank you, Alder. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Item number 98, 77467.
98. Thank you, Alder. Alder Tischler.
Yeah, I should say, number 20.
Item number 20. Thank you, Alder. Are there any additional requests for exclusion from the consent agenda? Seeing none, then let's just go through that list. Again, on item 2, just note that the recommended action is to adopt the substitute, and then we will exclude the following items from the consent agenda: 20, 23, 62, 76, 90, 92, 93, 94, and 98. And President Curry, a motion?
To adopt.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of the consent agenda? Seeing no objection, those items are all adopted with their recommendations. And President Curry.
Yes, Mayor, I don't know if a formal motion is needed for this, but on agenda item 23, we do have an interpreter that can only be with us until 7:30. I was wondering if we could take that out of order.
Absolutely. I think we have to go to public comment first, and then if there is an objection, we'll take up item 23 right away. Actually. All right, the attorney says it's okay for us to take public comment on the item, take the item up, and then go back to the rest of public comment. Is there any objection to doing so? Seeing no objection, that's what we'll do. And so item 23 is our first item for public comment. It is 21 plus entertainment license for La Pollera Colombiana on East Washington Ave. And we have one registrant wishing to speak, but let's first please bring our interpreter onto the line, Julio Garcia.
Yep, I'm here.
Excellent. And do we have Inés Herrera with us?
Gineth, ¿está con nosotros?
Sí, sí, aquí estoy.
And so, Julio, would you just first please explain that we will have her speak first, and then we will actually take up the item, and at the end, time permitting, I'd love to have you just explain to her the final result.
Ya. Entonces, Gineth, va usted a hablar primero, después van a debatir sobre el asunto y después les explico, les resumo el debate que han tenido.
Ok, perfecto.
Perfecto.
Okay, so Inés, por favor.
Sí, Gineth puede hablar ya.
Ok, bueno, mi nombre es Ginés, soy representante de la Pollera Colombiana. Nosotros aplicamos por la licencia de entretenimiento para más de 21. Como ya explicaba, la idea es poder tener un DJ 2 viernes al mes hasta las 2 de la mañana. En la reunión anterior me aceptaron la licencia o pues proceder al siguiente paso, pero me pusieron una condición que fuera nomás el DJ hasta las 11 de la noche. Entonces quería saber si existía la opción de poder remover esa condición para que sea, como habíamos pedido, hasta las 2 de la mañana. ¿Qué tan posible sería o cómo sería el procedimiento para poder obtenerla?
Yeah, so I am Gineth and I am the representative for the Pollera Colombiana, and we were asking for an entertainment license for over 21, and we were asking to have a DJ 2 Fridays a month until 2 a.m. First, the license was accepted, but there were several conditions added to it. One of them was that the DJ only could be there until 11 p.m. instead of until 2 a.m. So I would like to know what we could be done to see if this condition is removed and we can have the DJ until 2 a.m.
Gracias. Are there questions for the registrant? Alder Miadze, is it a question? No?
Plus swear in the interpreter.
No, we don't need to. Okay. Alder Figueroa Cole, question for the registrant?
Yes, I just want a clarification to make sure that I understood this correctly. So are we asking for a DJ to be, to just be twice a month? Is that what they said? Only twice a month for the bar to be open until 2 a.m., the music?
Yeah, correct. Gineth, están preguntando que sí, eso, que son solo 2 viernes al mes los que está solicitando el DJ.
Sí, para DJ tan tarde, sí. Igual como les había dicho, como aplicamos, va a seguir igualmente el menú abierto, entonces es como ambiente familiar, simplemente queremos tener el DJ un poco hasta más tarde. Igual se va a servir comida y se va a servir jugos y bebidas, no va a ser solamente alcohol.
It's only 2 Fridays, 2 Fridays a month. So the menu will be open all that time, and we want to preserve the family environment. So there will be food and juices sold, not only alcohol.
And so are these 2 days of the month specific?
¿Son 2 viernes específicos?
Sí, un viernes sí, un viernes no, así alterados.
Every other Friday, got it.
Yeah, one. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any other questions for the registrant? Seeing no other questions for the registrant, President Curry, a motion, please, on item 23.
Move to adopt or grant with conditions.
So the motion and second is to grant with conditions, and I'll just draw your attention on the agenda. The conditions are printed. The third condition is the one that's the registrant is asking to be different. Alder, so questions for staff and/or discussion. Alder Bennett.
I'm waiting for your discussion, sorry.
It's okay, go ahead. We're going to expedite here. We only have the interpreter for another 15 minutes.
Oh, sweet. Okay, well,
I can be longer. Okay, it's fine.
Thank you.
I guess I would like to make a motion to allow allow operations until 2 a.m. when they have the DJ. I'm assuming that's the ask.
To alter condition, to remove condition 3?
Yes.
Alder Bennett makes a motion to remove condition 3. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. So what's before us now is an amendment to remove the third condition from the license. Alder Curry?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for staff, but also want to clarify because I'm not sure if what I'm reading is the same as what Ms. Hedera has interpreted. So I'm seeing conditions are security must be recognizable with black letters on clothing, identifying them as security, live entertainment limited to 2 Fridays per month, and 3 establishment must cease entertainment by 11. I thought I heard every other Friday. I guess that does. Okay. Just wanted to clarify what's that. And then I just saw the application. I didn't have time to view the actual recording of the meeting and wondered if there were any staff that could speak to why these conditions were put in place.
Thank you, Alder. I am looking at the staff list, and I'm not sure if there's anyone present who can speak to this license. Failing that, I wonder if one of our ALRC members would be willing to ring in and describe the conversation. We'll see if that is possible. Alder Latimer Burris?
Yeah, so this happened right as I was elected and sworn in. And so I saw that, I read everything, I saw the conditions. And as I was just talking to other alders about it, is, everybody deserves a chance to do what they're going to do and do it the right way, but we also have to be concerned about the neighbors and the neighborhood and noise. So what I did is I gave the Alcohol Review Committee, who has alders on there that have been around for decades, the benefit of the doubt. I'm not coming in and disrupting everything, just if that's their recommendation. So I would like to hear more from staff or from people that were there, why they did the 11 o'clock. Would there be any room for, working at 11 o'clock? And if things were working at okay and we could hold a neighborhood meeting about it, to go to 2 o'clock, that may be a possibility or something. But we do want to be cognizant of the neighborhood as well when we're dealing with alcohol, because we don't want it to flip into, a dance club without people consenting to that.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Conklin?
Thank you, Chair. I did have a couple questions, and maybe because staff's not here, they cannot answer these questions, but I was wondering, is this a new business or is this a business that's already been up and running?
Maybe.
Yeah, Julio, do you want to ask Gineth, please?
Yep, I will. Let me make a quick summary for Gineth of what the discussion has been.
Please.
If I may. Entonces, Gineth, simplemente un resumen muy rápido de lo que han estado discutiendo. En algún momento hubo una moción para aprobar la recomendación del Comité de Alcohol, que se serían incluidas las 3 condiciones. Después se leyeron las 3 condiciones y se clarificó que eran 2 viernes al mes hasta las 2 de la mañana y que el permiso era de 2 viernes al mes hasta las 11. Después la concejal Bennett hizo una moción para aprobar hasta las 2 de la mañana y después están discutiendo las razones por las que el Comité de Alcohol hizo la recomendación de que sea solo 2 viernes hasta las 11 de la noche. Están mirando a ver si alguien miembro del personal de la ciudad o representante que esté presente en el Comité de Alcohol, a ver si podían resumir un poco cuál fue la discusión. Entonces, la última concejal que habló decía que de dar el beneficio de la duda a los miembros del comité, porque llevan haciendo eso durante años y que tendrían sus razones para hacerlo y que hay que tener en cuenta el ruido y los vecinos y la posibilidad o el riesgo de que se convierta en un club de baile, en un club nocturno. Entonces estaban preguntando, la pregunta que tenían era ¿cuánto tiempo lleva en funcionamiento el negocio, Gineth?
Vamos a hacer 8 meses, abrimos el 24 de octubre, entonces sí, 8 meses. Y pues bueno, acerca de los vecinos, la verdad estamos como en un área donde no hay como mucha residencia. Tenemos un laundryman al lado, hay un boli que también está cerrado y creo que lo más cerca sería el hotel. Y pues sí, o sea, tanto que se convierta como algo en club nocturno, pues no, porque como que no vamos a cobrar entrada y va a ser más que nada como para ambientar un ratico mientras la gente está comiendo y disfrutando un buen rato. Igual va a ser como con límite de venta de alcohol o pues sí, o sea, se va a tener mucho cuidado con eso.
So we opened on October 24th, so it's going to be 8 months that we have been open. And the area where we are in, it's not much of a residential area. We are next to a bowling alley, a laundromat, and a hotel. And we are not planning of starting any kind of nightclub. We are not going to charge any cover to enter. It's going to be just to create some ambience, some music while people are eating.
Thank you. Alder Figueroa Cole?
Well, I kind of have questions for Alder Rivera, but he's in the queue, so maybe I'll pass that on to him.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Verveer.
Thank you, Mayor. So my recollection of the conversation at the Alcohol License Review Committee on May 24th is as follows. The committee did spend a fair amount of time on this application. And what you see before you is a unanimous recommendation. I would consider it perhaps a compromise. And the rationale for this compromise was because we did not have the benefit of input that evening from the Alder of the District, Neighborhood Association, or the Madison Police Department. In terms of the latter, the ALRC meeting conflicted with the MPD's annual award ceremony, and no representatives from MPD were present because of that conflict. We generally, historically, treat entertainment licenses very seriously. Not that we don't treat all matters on our agenda very seriously, but there is a history, and I don't want the applicant to take any offense, please, whatsoever. But there is a history of restaurants morphing into nightclubs when entertainment licenses have been granted in the past. And so we wanted to be cautious, and absent, again, input from those entities, we decided to allow them to go out with this pilot, if you will, and ask them to come back in a few months after they and all of us have the experience that we can consider further relaxing the conditions. So it's, for those that aren't aware, there are some options for the council tonight, and to make it clear, we as a council have the final say in all alcohol license matters. The ALRC is purely a body making formal recommendations to us here at the council. But anyway, in the past, there are some of the options that you could consider here this evening, besides the motion that's before us, is to refer this to the ALRC at our next meeting in a few weeks, where we would have the input from MPD, the Alder of the District, and Neighborhood Association, if there is an active one here. Or two, allow this to be approved tonight, allow them to begin entertainment immediately, as early as the next couple of days, and immediately file an application for a change of license premise, which also would get them back before the ALRC sooner rather than later. So those are some other options I just wanted to share with colleagues. So those were the points of the discussion as I, again, recall them, and it was more us being cautious because we had a lack of information that evening. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there are others that my colleagues might have that I didn't address just now. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Knox?
Can I make a quick summary because there was a lot of information?
Yeah, please.
Yep. Entonces, Ginette, el concejal que estaba en la reunión del comité de alcohol, lo que ha dicho es que la decisión esta recomendación se hizo por decisión unánime y que fue una especie de acuerdo a medio camino entre todas las partes que una de las razones por las que no se concedió es porque faltaban representantes de la asociación de vecinos, de la policía y el concejal de ese distrito en particular, y quiere indicar el concejal que las licencias de alcohol se le da una seriedad especial a la hora de ser analizadas porque hay un historial en la ciudad, y esto no tiene nada que ver con usted, que hay un historial de que hay restaurantes que se transforman en clubes nocturnos a través de una licencia de entretenimiento. Entonces, más o menos lo que se intentó hacer aquí es como una especie de programa piloto para ver cómo iba esto de tener el DJ hasta las 11 de la noche y que después se le sugirió que volviera después de unos meses para solicitar la otra licencia en caso de que todo fuera bien. Y el concejal indicó que hay varias opciones que tiene aquí el Consejo de la Ciudad, que una de ellas es devolver el caso al comité de las licencias de alcohol, porque ellos solo dan recomendaciones, y entonces a analizarlo otro día en el que sí que estén presentes la asociación de vecinos, la policía y el concejal. La otra sería recibir la información de estas partes, y la otra sería lo que está en la moción que se consideró, de que se apruebe esa moción y después hacer que vuelva usted otra vez al comité de alcohol, de licencias de alcohol, para solicitar el cambio en de la licencia del edificio. Y ahora había un concejal también que quería hablar, Jenneth.
Okay.
Alder Knox?
Yeah. First of all, I don't have any recall on the discussion on this at Alcohol Review. I don't think I was present at that time. But one of the things I know, yeah, right, it was a rescheduled meeting that I couldn't attend. I'm not clear if the owner is actually requesting the motion at hand. They are? Okay. Well, I probably would not support that motion because in most cases, these conditions are put into place for a reason. When I was alder previously, had Regent Street, we had a lot of conversations about the neighbors and the conditional use of these kinds of permits. So I would assume that the reason these three conditions are there from that discussion that Mike mentioned, other than the fact that maybe the police wasn't there, maybe the alder wasn't there, but I would err on the side of caution and actually keep these conditions. And if there are no problems, then they could always kind of reapply to remove those conditions. So,
Thank you, Alder. Alder Bennett.
Thank you. Please bear with me, Mayor. This is a question. It will lead to one. Okay. So after I did a quick Google search, I noticed that like a couple blocks away, there are two establishments, Club Lamarck and Lazy Oaf Lounge, that are open late nights, even on weekdays, past 1 a.m., 2 a.m. There's other bars and clubs in just a mile radius of this site, including Lake Room Sports Bar, Tip Top Tavern, Jerry's Place, and The Crucible. I'm wondering, given that there are several establishments that clearly serve alcohol late night, even on weekdays, past 2 a.m. in this specific area, if neighbors, wouldn't that construe the thought that neighbors are used to having this type of activity in their neighborhood?
Let that hang as a question for the room rather than to a specific person. In interest of time for our interpreter, we have a number of alders in the queue.
Oh, I have a other question as well, too. Wondering, are there any other clubs that are Latine owned in this area? Not even just clubs, but bars owned by Latine people that are open late night in this area?
Although we don't have anyone from the ALRC here
Okay, I see.
to answer questions.
And then I'm wondering to the owner, like, what is like the administrative hurdle for them to come back to the Alcohol License and Review Committee?
So normally we would not go back to the applicant for a question, but since I've already allowed it, I'll allow it again. So Julio, did you catch that question?
Yep, let me make like a quick summary. Just looking for that. Sí, simplemente, Ginés, uno de los concejales, el concejal que habló primero, no estuvo presente en la comisión de alcohol y dijo que él prefiere errar por el lado de tener cuidado y mantener las condiciones. Después la concejal Bennett hizo una búsqueda y vio que hay otros locales en la zona que no muy lejos, que tienen licencias de alcohol y de entretenimiento hasta la 1 de la mañana por lo menos, incluso los días de diario, y que piensa que los vecinos entonces deberían estar acostumbrados. Sí se pregunta si hay algún otro bar en la zona o club nocturno que sea propiedad de algún negocio latino, y la pregunta que tiene esta concejal Bennett también es que sí, ¿cuál sería el problema administrativo para usted de volver otra vez al comité de licencias de alcohol?
Perdón, no entendí. ¿Cuál sería el problema?
Sí.
¿Qué, perdón?
Que si sería demasiado complicado para usted el volver can I clarify the question? Alder Bennett, do you mean like to come now to go back now to the ALRC committee, or come back in some months after like some months?
That's the question that is being proposed. Like, I'm wondering, like, how hard was it to even put forward this proposal and then to be asked to come back again?
I think the question is at whatever point she might come back, is there a hardship?
Ok, sí, entonces la pregunta es que si les supondría un costo adicional, un problema adicional el volver otra vez al hacer una solicitud ante el comité de alcohol.
No, la verdad no, lo que pasa es que yo estoy tratando de seguir como los pasos que me han dicho. Yo pregunté después de la reunión anterior si era mejor volver a poner la aplicación, volver a hacer la reunión con el comité, volver a hacer todo, y me dijeron no. Pasa a la siguiente cita y allá pides por favor que te remuevan de pronto las condiciones que te pusieron y ya ellos deciden. Entonces, por eso seguí. Si no, por mí no hay ningún inconveniente, porque la verdad quiero hacer las cosas bien, no quiero hacer nada como no se debe hacer, porque pues la idea es montar un negocio y montarlo apropiadamente. Entonces no quiero que se preste para nada que no deba, y tener todo muy claro desde un principio. O sea, ¿sí me entienden? No quiero que piensen que quiero, no. Si estoy acá pidiendo una licencia es porque quiero hacer las cosas bien y como se deben hacer, sin tapujos y sin nada. Si quisiera de pronto una licencia para solo bar o solo nightclub o solo baile, yo sé que aplicaría por esa licencia como tal, pero pues como es solo restaurante, por eso lo estoy haciendo de este medio, que fue como me dijeron que era la vía correcta para obtener esta licencia. Porque no es bar, porque no es taberna, porque pues fue la explicación que me dieron.
Yeah, basically I'm just trying to follow the steps, the guidance that I received. They told me that the next step would be just to come to this meeting, just to like make the request to remove the conditions. And if I'm asking, is just because of that, because they told me that was like a possible step I could have. I don't have any inconvenience on going back to the license, the alcohol, the ALRC committee. And because I just want to do things properly. I don't want to give the impression that I am trying to find a shortcut or doing something that is not proper. I have a restaurant. They told me I could ask for this, and if I wanted to have a nightclub or any kind of bar or tavern, I would ask for a license for that particular type of property. I just want to do the things properly, and I don't want to give the impression that I am trying to do anything other than that.
Thank you. Alder Bennett, are you done? Alder Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. I hope that Alder Rivera will be able to answer this question. So, for clarification, again, if we didn't have the things that the applicant needs to get to the ARC, I'm trying to understand why didn't the ARC just refer it back to themselves instead of bringing it here? I mean, just trying to understand if did she contact the neighborhood association, or she didn't contact the neighborhood association? Did she contact the elder or didn't contact the elder? If those check boxes were not checked, why is the application here? Is that a process that we've done in the past? If you don't mind.
So we'll let the question stand, and Alder Latimer Burris is next. Alder Latimer Burris?
Oh, sorry. Yes. So, I mean, I think all these are really great points. I don't want the owner. Well, first I'm going to make a statement, then I'm going to ask a question. I don't want the owner to be caught in a hard place because, you know, if I look at the schedule when this went to the Alcohol Review Committee, and it might have been moved, it's like my first day on the floor, right? And so they shouldn't be punished for that, although that the police they were not there either. And of course, I'm definitely cognizant with my cohort Bennett that we're always looking for DEI. So we don't want to make a hardship. So it's like maybe we can come and make a compromise. Maybe we can give it conditional on the next couple of months to 11. If it's going okay, we can go until 2:00. That way it gives them time to meet with me, meet with the police, and have the neighborhood meeting. Now, I do want to comment on the location because I know exactly where this restaurant is. It used to be, I think, an Indian fusion restaurant, and because I did knock on 3,500 doors, I knocked that entire area, and so it's a little bit different from Club Lamarck. Club Lamarck, truly great hamburgers, but it doesn't back up into a residential area. This one is on the corner. You know, there's the one where you have the little hotel, and then you have some laundry, then you have some, if I'm not mistaken, you know, the Buick or whatever, Volkswagen. So I'd like to come to a compromise to go with the committee's recommendation and then revisit it. Of course, we want to empower people, and we don't want them to be punished because of any kind of barrier and or process. So that's what I'm looking at. So I'd like to amend your amendment, if that's possible, to say, let's go with 11:00 p.m., and then we can revisit it in 90 days, you know, have an order to revisit it in 90 days. Is that possible? Is that in order?
It's not actually possible to amend the amendment, but if your desired outcome is to keep the condition for 11 p.m., then you should vote against the amendment and work with the applicant to come back with another application.
Okay.
In that timeframe.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I just want to make sure that they understand, and maybe the interpreter can let them know that, you know, it's a little bit of getting caught in the process and a little bit of, you know, going about the process, that it's not that we don't believe them. Which brings me to my question. For clarity, is it that they would like to have music until 2 p.m., and that's live music until 2 p.m.?
She would like to have a DJ until 2 a.m., 2 Fridays a month.
Okay. I read the application. I just can't remember everything. We have 500 pages we read each week.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Verveer?
Well, in response to Alder Figueroa Cole, if I remember the question correctly, again, at the risk of repeating myself, my recollection of the meeting several weeks ago is that we were attempting to assist this applicant and not delay her further by referring this matter. So Vice Chair Amy Westra, as I recall, made the motion that you have before you this evening on your agendas in the spirit of compromise, absent the information that we usually have at our meetings. And again, at the risk of being repetitive, we didn't have input from MPD, Alder of the district, or a neighborhood association. And I don't want to put this on the Alder of the district because, frankly, many of my colleagues do not regularly share input with the ALRC on items in their respective districts, so it's not an obligation, but it's something that we do appreciate at the ALRC very much. We're all human and we tried to be helpful. And the applicant, as Alder has stated, the applicant did apply some time ago. As you see in the legislative history, she was unable to appear at the April ALRC meeting. So this was already referred once from the April ALRC meeting due to lack of appearance to the May meeting. And again, other options we have here would be to, if maybe we should ask this of the applicant, if the mayor, you say it's in order, but if the choice is between accepting this compromise and allowing DJs, to perform before 11 p.m. over the next several weeks, is that an option that the applicant would like to accept? Or in the alternative, we could move to re-refer this tonight, as was Alder Figueroa Cole's question, refer this tonight, and this would then automatically have this application back before the ALRC at our next meeting, which is in a couple weeks on June 21st. That would be the quickest way to have this back before the ALRC, is if we re-referred it to the next meeting of the ALRC. Again, that's June 21st. Otherwise, the applicant would have to make an application at a later date for a change of license premise. And the earliest then that this applicant would be able to get on an agenda, because if the deadline has passed, wouldn't be until the July ALRC meeting on July 19th. So again, there are various options that we have at our disposal this evening. Lastly, I'll say that perhaps the committee was extra cautious on this one. Again, because not only we didn't have any input, but it was only a matter of days since the Lush homicide, and this is within a couple blocks of Lush. And we're human, as I said at the outset here, and that was probably part of our thinking, to be honest with all of you, which isn't fair to the applicant, but just thinking of what this immediate neighborhood has been dealing with in terms of violence related to establishments. So those are my general recollections of the meeting. I think I remember it correctly. Again, bottom line, in response to the question, we were trying to be helpful to the applicant by giving her by recommending that we grant the entertainment license, but with conditions. And lastly, if you actually look at the application in Legistar, you'll see that several of the questions were left blank, and acknowledging that English is obviously not the primary language of this applicant. We understand this evening, based on the use of the interpreter, we try not to hold that against applicants, but for example, some of you might think, well, what's this weird, really specific condition relating to uniform? It's because in response to the question relating to identify security personnel, the response of the applicant was the word black. So that's just to explain one of that first condition relating to uniforms, was to try to clarify what was already recorded on the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Rivera. I'm going to pause and let our interpreter catch up.
Yeah, I'm going to make a quick summary. Gineth, están simplemente los diferentes concejales han estado hablando. La concejal Cole se preguntaba que por qué había llegado este caso aquí al Consejo de la ciudad, cuando quizás parece que había todavía algunas dudas por ahí. Entonces, la concejal de su zona, que acaba de empezar como concejal y por eso no estuvo presente en la reunión del comité de alcohol, y se disculpa por eso, dice ya lo que dice, que quizás ella estaría dispuesta a buscar un punto intermedio, un punto de encuentro entre todas las posiciones y conceder, que por qué no conceder la licencia del DJ hasta las 11 de la noche durante los próximos 90 días, y si todo va bien, que se presente otra vez ante el comité de alcohol para solicitar la licencia hasta las 2 de la mañana, que es la que originalmente estaba pidiendo. El concejal Revere, que es el que estuvo en el comité, está tratando de recordar un poco qué es lo que pasó, y él recuerda que fue la concejal Huestra la que hizo la moción para aprobarlo, y que usted no pudo ir al de abril, entonces esto se estaba retrasando, y que todos más o menos toda la idea era intentar ayudarle en lo más posible y facilitarle todo lo más posible y no tener que hacerlo dice el concejal Revere que quizás una posibilidad es volver a referir el caso al comité de alcohol y en ese caso se podría tratar en el próximo comité de alcohol, que sería el 21 de junio, y quizás tener las preguntas, tener la información que faltaba de la policía, de la asociación de vecinos y de la concejal de la zona. Si no, la otra opción sería hacer una solicitud de cambio de licencia, pero esa ya solo podría llegar al comité del 19 de julio. Entonces se le retrasaría también esta posibilidad. Y afirma el concejal que quizás en su caso sí que fueron un poco más cautelosos de lo normal, entre otras cosas, porque quizás en la mente de todos estaba que había habido un homicidio en un bar de la zona, el Lash, que está simplemente a 2 manzanas, a 2 cuadras de donde está usted, y que quizás pensando en todo el estrés que ha podido haber en el barrio en torno a esta violencia, que quizás esa fue la razón por la que todos tuvieran un poco más de cuidado. Que lo único que estaban intentando es ser lo más útiles posible, ayudarle en la medida de lo posible, y que por eso se aprobó esta solicitud con condiciones.
Gracias. Okay. Alder Bennett for the third time is not there. Alder Bennett?
I'm just ready for discussion.
You're next, Alder Bennett,
Oh,
for the
well,
third time.
If someone wants to go and has questions, I don't want to.
We've dispensed with that, Alder. Do you want to pass?
What? Okay, sorry. I'm sorry. Can you just come back to me 1 second? Sorry.
Alder Slack?
I just want to clarify, this applicant already has an alcohol license. This is about the entertainment license. So in comparing to other establishments nearby that have alcohol license, says we don't actually know, I don't think, how many also have entertainment licenses.
That's a matter of public record, but we don't have the information before us.
But I just wanted to clarify, it's the entertainment part of it.
That's correct. Thank you, Alder. Alder Figueroa Cole?
Yes.
Alder Figueroa Cole? Alder Figueroa Cole?
I mean, based on the applicant's feedback regarding not minding the referral, I think we should referral to the next ARC meeting. That's kind of my recommendation, but I don't know where that fits in.
It's not.
The argument here.
The motion's not in order at the moment. We have to dispense with the amendment, but after we dispense with the amendment, we can come back to that question.
Okay.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Bennett for the third time.
I would like to withdraw my previous motion and instead motion to refer to the June, something meeting?
21st.
21st meeting of the Alcohol License and Review Committee.
Right, is there objection to allowing Alder Bennett to withdraw the motion to eliminate condition 3 and to replace it with a motion to refer this item to the 621 ALRC? Is there any objection? Okay, not seeing any objection. The motion that's before us is to refer to the June 21st ALRC. And Julio, do you want to just catch the applicant up?
Yep. Sí, una cosa, Ginés, es unas cosas un poco de orden. Entonces, lo que ha hecho la concejal que había hecho la moción para aprobar lo que estaba ante ellos, ha retirado esa moción y ahora hay una moción para volver a referir su caso al comité de alcohol que se reunirá el 21 de junio y así para que puedan tener todas las preguntas que tienen los concejales para que se pueda responder a esas preguntas. Esa es la nueva moción que está sobre la mesa. Volverá a referir su caso al próximo comité de licencias de alcohol.
Alder Bennett, did you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I did. Thank you. I appreciate your patience, Mayor. I don't want to make a huge grandstand or anything, but I guess I am. This is one of the situations where I think it's very important for us to be cautious and also vigilant and intentional about these licenses. Quite frankly, I think the way that we handle alcohol licenses and entertainment licenses in general is a mechanism of institutional racism that exists. And I mean this as no insult to anyone at LRC. That's not, you're following the rules. I understand that. However, I think it's also important to recognize how there are institutional barriers at play here with people knowing if they can go to an alcohol license review committee, or if they should even go, or if they can ask for a translator, or if they need to have a neighborhood meeting, or how to contact an alder. All of those things interplay with the licenses that come before us. And so, man, this is like my third meeting in a row where I'm talking about licenses. But, right, it's something where we really need to be vigilant of that. We need to be vigilant of coded language that we use when talking about licenses. And quite frankly, and speaking as a person of color, there's very few to no places where we can go and listen to our music and celebrate our culture in peace. And I think that a couple Fridays a month is worth having an establishment like that in our city. Obviously not solving all the problems, but there are others that exist. But that's why I just wanted to bring that to light and into this conversation, that we really need to be focusing on how we can remove those barriers to entry, even if it means going out of our way to promote equity in this equation.
Thank you, Alder. Because we have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak, I'm going to ask our interpreter to catch us up, and then we'll go to a vote.
Perfecto. Sí, Ginés, entonces lo que están hablando ahora, la concejal Bennett lo que estaba diciendo es que toda la cuestión de las licencias, que se les ponen muchas restricciones a las personas de color, hablaba de un mecanismos de racismo institucional, porque se ponen muchas barreras, ya que es muy complicado el saber todos los pasos del proceso de solicitar una reunión de vecinos, solicitar la presencia ante el comité, el estar presente ante el comité, y que se utiliza un lenguaje con códigos muy difíciles de comprender para buena parte de la población, y que también, que ya como persona de color, que sabe que hay muy pocos lugares donde las personas de color puedan ir a escuchar su música o simplemente a divertirse, y que piensa que 2 viernes al mes tampoco es un gran sacrificio en aras de promover la equidad. Esa es la reflexión que hizo la concejal Bennett.
Muchas gracias, Elar. Tiene mucha razón. Eso es muy complicado cuando la lengua no es la principal de uno, y sí, se le complica uno poder aplicar a varias cosas para poder tener el negocio y poder aplicar.
Yeah, thank you so much, and you are very, very right. Especially when English is not your main language, it becomes way more complicated to be able to ask for all licenses and follow the whole process.
Gracias, and that is why we're hiring a bilingual clerk. So I have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak. The motion before us is referral to the June 21st ALRC meeting. Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of referral? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of referral. The item will be referred to the June 21st ALRC meeting, and would you please tell the applicant that her item will be on the agenda for the June 21st ALRC meeting, and that we encourage her to be there and to speak with her alder in advance of that meeting. Julio? Do we still have you? I think we might need to unmute Julio again. Julio, are you there? No. Are you able to talk now? There you go.
Okay, now I am. Okay, yeah. Entonces, Ginette, lo que estaban diciendo es que la moción que se ha aprobado es que se vuelva el caso al Comité de Licencias de Alcohol para el 21 de junio. Entonces, recordarle que por favor que esté presente el 21 de junio en esa reunión del comité, y ya está el caso, estará directamente en la agenda y que hable mientras, hasta que llegue esa fecha, asegúrese de tener una reunión con la concejal de su distrito y con la asociación de vecinos.
Ok, ¿eso sería para volver a hacer todo el proceso o es para tener que exactamente todos los, o sea, todo, o sea, necesito saber qué es lo que necesito tener para no volver a que me devuelvan o para atrasar más la aplicación?
So the referral, Julio, is we have not granted her the ability to have the license yet. It's a referral of the question of whether or not and what conditions.
Sí, simplemente, Ginés, no ha habido ninguna moción aprobada, es simplemente de vuelta de nuevo el caso tal cual se presentó ante el Comité de Alcohol, simplemente para volver a ver cuál es la recomendación que se aprueba y si se hace la moción para traerlo aquí al Consejo con las condiciones que estaban establecidas o unas diferentes.
Okay. Mil gracias to our interpreter for keeping up with us.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated. And we will be moving on back to public comment because that is where we left off. And so the next item where we have public comment is item 62, which is approving plans and specifications for public improvements for the project known as Hartmeyer redevelopment and authorizing construction to be undertaken by the developer. On this item, our first registrant is Chris Elholm from District 12, to be followed by Jennifer Argelander. Do we have Chris?
Yes, you do.
Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you. I would like to make a repeat of previous comments, especially for the benefit of the new alders, plural. And that is my ongoing concern about the lack of concern and attention paid to a proposed development on contaminated land. Anything in the public works projects list, anything that is done as far as roads, for example, sidewalks, anything will disturb the soil and release contaminants. I think that this whole process should be stopped until there is a certain and clear conclusion that shows that this would be a safe site for people to live. And up to now, there is no proof whatsoever that the contamination is being addressed in a satisfactory way. So please don't move forward on approving a public works projects that will disturb the soil and allow the first phase of building until a complete analysis of the contamination is done and complete plans for remediation are done. And as I said, this is for the benefit especially of the new alders and a reminder for those that were reelected or who still sit on the council. And a thank you to Alder Amani Latimer Burris for recommending that this be referred to the future so it can be reviewed at deeper and more sincere length so we can have the contamination addressed in a satisfactory way. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next registrant is Jennifer Argelander of District 12, to be followed by Don Lindsay. Do we have Jennifer?
Yes, I couldn't find the unmute. Thank you for letting me speak. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I lost the picture. Anyway, I am the co-chair of the Sherman Neighborhood Association, and the Hartmeyer development is in our area. And this is a case of really putting the cart before the horse. It's really premature to be voting on this item at this time. And to repeat what Chris has just said, there is serious contamination on this site. and we have yet to see anything being done to address it. So until that is done, there shouldn't be any movement forward on these projects until we know that this land is safe for people to reside on. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next registrant is Don Lindsay of District 12, to be followed by Dolores Kester. Oh, I'm sorry. Don was not registered to speak. We have a number of other registrants, but they are not wishing to speak. Are there questions for any of our registrants? Seeing none, we will move on to agenda item 92, which is adopting the final report of the Task Force on Farmland Preservation. Our first registrant is Nan Fay of District 4, which will be followed by Marcia Caden Campbell. Do we have Nan?
Yes, I hope so.
Go ahead, Nan.
Thank you. I'm here this evening as the chair of the Farmland Preservation Task Force. In recent years, some of you may know that I've chaired the Madison Food Policy Council, the Plan Commission, and the Community Gardens Committee. I also served as interim director of the city's Department of Planning, Community, and Economic Development from 2019 to 2020. As described in the report, our process involved a hardworking, highly focused group that met over 30 times in the last 7 months. Members were chosen for their expertise in farming, sustainability, land use planning, conservation, and real estate development. Everyone participated in full task force meetings, as well as working on smaller teams to research specific topics. The purpose of the task force was to provide tools for city decision makers to address the obvious tension between the desire to develop buildings and tax base with the need to maintain community and climate resilience by growing food. The city has recognized this tension in its adopted plans and made significant efforts to support growing food on public land for decades. It has also provided zoning categories for urban agriculture that respect nearby uses, but there's been no clear guidance on the value of maintaining farmland in the community or factors identified for evaluating development proposals on productive soils. Indeed, it was the Ramish Farm Development Proposal that highlighted the need for guidance on these topics and prompted the resolution establishing this task force. The only opposition I'm aware of has come from Smart Growth, Inc., which objected to its formation from the outset and has attempted to influence its work along the way. But our goal has been to provide a policy framework that can help avoid what they view as wasteful controversy in the future. Accordingly, our report sets forth recommendations. Now, these are ideas, suggestions, and tools that could be helpful, along with over 200 pages of resources and research provided to educate city staff, members of relevant boards and commissions, and elected officials like yourselves about evaluating land in our community that can be used to grow food. I'm pleased to see so many of you listed as sponsors and the recommendation to adopt. While we might wish an affirmative vote conveyed support for our recommendations, we understand that it merely signals the completion of the requested work, in the words of the city attorney's office. Discussions of its recommendations will be appropriate later. We hope your vote this evening is a unanimous acknowledgement of our work, and we wish to thank Heather Stouter and Jeff Greger for their invaluable staff support during this intense process. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next registrant is Marcia Caton Campbell of District 12, to be followed by Mark Voss. Marcia?
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak in support of agenda item number 92, adoption of the Farmland Preservation Task Force's final report. I'm the executive director of Rooted, Madison's largest urban agriculture and food systems organization, and I'm a member of the Dane County Food Council, which also provided a letter of support related to this item. For the past 7 months, I've been privileged to serve as a member of the city's Farmland Preservation Task Force, and I helped draft the final report. For decades, housing, and especially affordable housing, and urban agriculture have been pitted against one another as competing and incompatible uses for the same parcels of land. However, housing and farmland preserved for food production can coexist quite harmoniously, as Madison's Troy Gardens and countless other agri-communities around the United States have demonstrated, and they can do so at even higher densities than what was achieved at Troy Gardens. Urban agriculture also contributes ecosystem services such as stormwater management, reduction in the urban heat island effect, habitat preservation, and it fosters biodiversity. In addition to food production capabilities, urban farms like Troy Gardens and Farm on Madison's North Side can be community gathering spaces that bring people together and provide social outlets for underrepresented groups. For urban farmers and prospective urban farmers, many of whom are growers of color, certainty about access to productive land, permanence of growing sites, and clarity about where growing conditions are safe are especially important. For market growers, food production is part of their livelihoods and contributes to better access to affordable, nutritious, and culturally specific fresh foods in Madison's food access improvement areas. Dollars spent locally recirculate many times over in the city's local economy and support those growers, food entrepreneurs, and local businesses. The task force's extensive report contains 47 recommendations in the key areas of land use planning, staffing and task forces, land leasing and soil contamination, and zoning and land use. It will set the stage for city agencies and departments, the nonprofit sector, and other community groups to further pursue the recommendations that create a more favorable and certain environment for food production in Madison. I urge you to vote in favor of adoption of this report, and I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Our next registrant is Mark Voss of District 18. Oh, I'm sorry. Again, not wishing to speak. Read the full registration, Satya. Are there questions for either of our registrants or any of those who did not wish to speak? Seeing none, then we'll move on to agenda item 98, which is amending sections of the Madison General Ordinances regarding advertising sign bank and replacement advertising signs, extending the sunset date and making procedural clarifications. And wishing to speak, we have Julie Johnson of District 1 representing Adams Outdoor Advertising. Do we have Julie with us? I'm sorry, Alder, did you have a question?
It was for the last registrant, but of course, I don't know if you just looked over too soon, but you didn't see me.
We can go back, Alder, but let's hear from Julie since she's here.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. My name is Julie Johnson. I've been the general manager of Adams Outdoor Advertising for the last several years. We are the largest billboard company in Dane County. I hope that you will be able to support this ordinance extension. The sign bank cap and replace ordinance has worked in the past with minimal inventory. The University Avenue at the old Party Port site and Regent Street projects in the past allowed us to move our billboards off a parcel to make way for new development. This ordinance allows us to do that without adding any additional square feet. We're not trying to add any more inventory to the city of Madison, but rather just continue to operate with what we have. It is worth mentioning that we are a company residing locally, consistently giving back to the community. Every year we do partner with local area nonprofits through our Collaborate program. Just since 2017, we have worked with 30 different Dane County nonprofits, including the River Food Pantry, Madison Parks Foundation, and Deer Diary, to grow and expand their causes. We live and work in this community. We want to see Madison continue to grow. We urge you to support the extension of this valuable tool that enables the negotiation of timely development. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this registrant? Seeing none, thank you very much. And Alder Miadze, did you want to go back to either Nan Fay or Marsha Caton Campbell?
Well, one already left, but Nan Fay, if that's all right.
Nan, are you still on the line with us?
I am.
Go ahead, Alder.
Oh, yeah, just, I think May 22nd on the Plan Commission, and you also mentioned it tonight, about the group came about because of the implementation of the Ramish Farm. I'm just curious, why did the group come about, and what was the issue with the Ramish Farm? I know the Ramish Farm had community gardens that was on it too. So I guess it's a two-part question. One, why did a group come about because of the Ramish Farm? And the second part, because it has community gardens, are you guys thinking about purchasing that 10 acres?
I can't speak to the second question. The task force is not an entity that can purchase anything. So I really don't know what the status of that situation is. As for the task force growing out of the Ramish Farm discussions, I believe the problem was that decision makers felt they didn't have adequate information to evaluate to balance the needs of the community for housing with the needs of the community for areas in which food can continue to be grown. And decision makers at the council level and perhaps even at the Plan Commission level were eager to have more information and some guidelines for what kinds of issues should they be considering, what kind of information should they have about the land that was involved, especially if it was already involved in productive agriculture. And the task force was charged with, in its enabling ordinance, a resolution, I should say, with coming up with some suggestions about guidelines and researching the kinds of issues that decision makers just frankly needed more information about.
I guess my last question is, I've heard so often here about the North Side, Troy Gardens, and people of color gardening there. I'm just wondering, what is the makeup of the people, or the demographic picture of the people that make up the task force?
Well, as I mentioned, we had members who are familiar with development questions. There were 2 growers on the committee. If you're asking about people of color, Yimua Yang was representing the Groundswell Conservancy, but everyone had expertise in the areas that I mentioned in my comments.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Alder, and thank you, Nan. Are there any other
Welcome.
questions for any registrants at this point? Seeing none, that brings us to the end of public comment, and we will go on to item 20. Item 20 is Legistar 78135, submitting resident committee appointments. President Curry?
Caught me mid Snickers. Move to adopt.
Moved and seconded. These are actually referred to the next meeting for introduction. So is the proper motion to refer? Move to introduce? So the motion then is to move introduction. Alder Tischler.
Yeah, just a quick question, probably something that could have been an email had I thought about it earlier. And again, my apologies. Sorry, based off of the excellent, my question, rather than wasting any more time, is I realize we're just introducing residents, but I guess my question is why, what about alder appointments to the Transportation Committee? Is that just something that we're going to be introducing?
We introduced the aldermanic and the resident items separately, just that's a matter of course.
Okay.
So, yes.
And so, all right, so by the time these individuals will be, introduced or voted on at the next meeting?
So yes,
We'll also
this item
also
will
have
be
the alders.
will be voted on next meeting, and we will have aldermanic appointments as well.
I just wanted clarity before I vote. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, so for folks who are not familiar, the aldermanic appointments are introduced and voted on at the same meeting. But the resident appointments are introduced at one meeting and then voted on at the next meeting. Alder Slack.
I just wondered, there's a Transportation Commission meeting, I think, tomorrow. Are there alders on the commission at the moment? I'm
Yes.
sorry if I don't know. Okay, thank you.
Yep. The existing membership continues by the ordinance change. The existing membership continues until we appoint the new members. So next meeting, when we appoint the residents and the alders, then we'll switch from the old having TPBB and TC to the new having just the new TC. All right. Any other questions or discussion on item 20? Seeing none, the motion is to introduce. Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, that item is introduced. We've already taken care of item 23. So we will go next to item 62. Item 62 is Legistar 77792, approving plans and specifications for public improvements necessary for the project known as Hartmeyer redevelopment and authorizing construction to be undertaken by the developer. On item 62, President Curry, a motion, please.
Move to adopt.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded to adopt item 62. On item 62, are there questions? Alder Slack.
So I've read and heard different things about this project along the way, and it's my understanding that there has been testing for contaminants in the soil and that sort of thing. Could I please have some information about what has been done to address this concern that was raised by residents?
Absolutely, Alder. And in fact, the city engineer is here with us, and I'm going to ask him to just give us a little overview of what the project is and what the history is in terms of soil testing and environmental issues.
Yes, I'll do my best anyway. So as of now, pretty extensive sampling has been done on this site already, that the developer has been coordinating with the DNR on that. And it's at a point in time where the DNR is comfortable with the status of it. This is getting a little bit out of my world with some of the real estate transaction pieces of it, but my understanding is that the developer that's proposing this development is not currently the landowner, and that the land sale is likely contingent upon an approved site plan for development at this property. So with some of the land sale transactions being contingent on that, they haven't formalized their report based around the sampling that the DNR has been, kind of coordinating with the developer on. So that's kind of why you maybe haven't seen some of the formal documentation on it. But it is in a place where folks are comfortable, and they will have a material management plan once they move forward with an actual project here.
Thank you. Alder Evers?
Thank you, Mayor. Jim, could you speak to perhaps a comparable area of the city, East Washington, which, from my understanding, that back in the day, it was considered a contaminated site, and now this is where, kind of the miracle mile of development along the East Washington corridor. What happens? What is the process by which, well, two parts. Can you compare the contamination over in the Hartmeyer site and that area there that residents are concerned about with the contamination that was on East Washington? And second, what is the process by which contamination is usually cleaned up? Is it not development?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I don't have all of the background along East Washington Avenue, but I do know citywide that the contamination at this site is pretty typical from some past industrial type practices with buried petroleum tanks in particular. And then the second point is, yes, often the contamination is cleaned up as part of development. It really depends upon what the contamination is. Some things are removed and disposed of properly at the landfill. Other things, depending upon what is coordinated with the DNR on, get enclosed on site, kind of similar to what like some of our abandoned landfills are enclosed in, where it's buried deep and covered with a clay cap, just kind of seal it up and make sure there's no harm to the public there.
And lastly, is the hydrologist available to answer any questions today, the city hydrologist?
She is not.
We do not have Bryn here tonight.
Have you spoken with her about this particular issue?
I have.
And has she raised concerns that would suggest that we should pause at this present time?
She is not. She feels comfortable with where things are at right now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alder Rummel.
Thank you, Mayor. I was not Alder when this last term, but I am familiar with this site. And I do recall from the public testimony prior that there was concern raised by people like Maria Powell and Majo, her organization, about the difference between residential versus industrial standards. Do we know whether this testing that you, Jim, have indicated has happened has addressed that, whether it's safe for residential, is one of the people speaking tonight questioned?
I believe that would be part of that formal material management plan that would get passed through the developer with the coordination with the DNR.
And so we're still waiting for that because it's based on a land sale?
Correct. That you can't really send in a report to DNR about a property that you don't own.
And the policy question here is like, this is sort of a standard plans and specs thing. Do we usually have all that information when we approve plans and specs? Or, I guess I was around for the East Washington stuff, and I know a lot of work went into it, but I don't remember how, like, at this phase, what we discussed. So what's typical for this part of the process?
Alder, I think that Director Stouter also wants to speak to your questions.
Sure, that's a great question. Thanks, Alder Rummel. And Jim, you may have been ready to say this too, so my apologies. But I think it's important to note to the council that it's very common for the Plan Commission or the council to approve something with a slate of conditions that must be met before development moves forward. And so one of the conditions, actually two of the conditions that are related here, with regard to the conditional use for over 500 units that were approved at this site, do relate to the need for the developer to provide to the city an approved Wisconsin DNR plan to clean up the contamination on the site before they can actually pull building permits on the site. So what you have before you this evening is simply the design of the street that will be constructed at the time that the development moves forward. We still have a lot of steps before they can actually pull development or pull building permits and move forward. And that's a really important one that's, crystal clear within the list of conditions that they'll have to meet.
Thank you, Ms. Stouter. I do believe the concerns are crystal clear and consistently raised, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Latimer Burrs.
Yeah, so of course, it's Amani night tonight with District 12. So, look, I haven't talked to everybody about it, but this reminds me of the PFAS situation, or it reminds me a lot of the smoking, when they used to say, smoking's not bad, don't worry about it. People used to smoke for eons and, don't worry about it. So I'm down for development. I want us to have a lot of development. We're 10,000 units behind. We have been 10,000 units behind for over a decade. I want to, everybody to build their legacy. I'm down with it, but I'm not down with I'm not down, and it's uncertain to me that we know actually what's going on. Now, I am no scientist. My sister happens to be a scientist, chemical engineer at Stanford, so she knows way more than I. I'm just a basic person. But I understand if you test at different levels, different things happen. I understand that there's kind of a land contract here, but they're not sure if there's really a land contract. And we got to get to the land contract, and we got to get started, and we got to dig down. And if there's any problems, the developer's going to take care of it. And I'm not anti-development. I love development. I used to own $4.3 million worth of property. I mean, I think it's great. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's just appropriate to say, oh, you know, we did East Washington, and that was a landfill, and over there was a landfill, and don't worry about it if we get it. Don't worry about it. This was a slaughterhouse. It's Oscar Mayer. We know that there's stuff's going to go down. We know when, you know, I'm very basic. You know, I don't know much about building, but I know when you go down and you put pipes down and low, you got to go more than like, you know, a foot or two. You got to go down like 15 feet. I mean, I don't know all these things. And so to say, I just want to try to find a way here that we can do both, you know? We could like make sure that they're held to a standard and our stop gauge isn't the DNR, okay? That we're the stop gauge. And also, you know, that we are paying attention to what people are saying. Now, I remember when the mayor was first running for office, she brought up PFAS, and the whole thing was like, hey, oh, you know, there's no standards, there's no standards, right? You know? Not a big deal, not a big deal, you know? And then we found out, oh my gosh, like we have a lot of PFAS in there and it's way beyond the standard. And the reason that we don't understand it is because the standard that was defined at the time was 70 parts per trillion. And then they dropped that down to 4 parts per trillion. And now it looks like we're gonna go to 0. So, I don't know, like we've gotta,
Alder, is there a question here?
Yeah, so it's a question or a statement. Sorry. So my question is, the issue that I have with is, I don't have a problem with, so let me ask the question, and I'm going to ask it in a backwards way. I don't have a problem with approving the plans and specifications for improvements and so forth. The problem that I have does this have to include authorizing construction to be undertaken by the developer? Does that mean that, here's my question. Does anything in this report, if we accept it, or we, what is the other key word here, approve, which is always in the language, accept or approve, is there anything in this report or allowing the developer to, what is the key language here, undertake construction? Is there anything in this report that deals with the deep level potential unknown contaminants like arsenic? You know, again, I'm not a scientist, I'm very basic. The unresolved issues that the neighborhood has been brought up, and the people, by the way, that are bringing these issues up, I do believe they are PhD, and I do believe they are scientists, and I am amazed at how much information they know. So is there anything in this plan that would be, that addresses that? And if not, like, I mean, just give us the basics of what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to, you know, make this land contract work? What are we trying to do here before we put people there? And I don't want to approve something where they're like, well, you know, we can start development because it was in the language where it says construction, the developer can begin construction. Does that make sense? I'm not making sense because it is not clear and I want to know what's going on.
Ms. Dowder, would you just run through for the Alder what the steps are? This is one item in a multi-part process for development. Could you just run through those steps before you would actually have a building constructed with people living in it?
Yes. Thank you, Alder. Like many development proposals, and this one was a relatively complex one for over 500 units with the creation of new lots and even a new street network, which is what you're seeing before you this evening. The steps would be typically that a developer would come in with this idea and, you know, over the course of many, many months, work with staff, work with various boards, committees, and commissions to iron things out and come up with an approvable site plan, which would be where do the buildings sit on the site, approvable architectural plans. How tall are the buildings? How many units are there in the buildings? What other amenities are located, within those buildings? What's the architecture look like? This piece is actually just the street design in the public right-of-way next to the buildings. But all of it together comes with a really long list of sometimes dozens and dozens of conditions of approval that have to be checked off. It's like a checklist of things that a developer needs to meet before they ultimately pull a building permit. And right behind me, Matt Tucker is here from the Building Inspection Division. The building permit is the point at which a development starts to come out of the ground. They start actually constructing the buildings. And so in this particular case, one of the many, many, many dozens of conditions of approval is that the development team, needs to be able to show our city hydrogeologist, Bryn Bemis, an approved site cleanup plan approved by the Wisconsin DNR. And that's who we rely on for, basically to assess the site and to assess the testing that's been done for our assurance that the cleanup has happened, or as Jim mentioned, that the buildings and streets would cover the contamination and make it so that it would not be permeating out into the public realm over time. Very common. This has happened along East Washington Avenue in the Capitol East District with sites that have redeveloped over the past decade. And so it's, I guess I can't stress enough how common it is to be in this conundrum where, we have the conditions of approval, we're waiting for these final cleanup steps to happen before a development can begin, before that building permit can be pulled and development can begin. These particular buildings will probably take 1.5 years or more to build, and so we won't see occupants living here until at least 2025 would be my best guess.
It's a question.
Yeah. Go ahead, Alder.
Do we have, I want to slow this down a little bit. So the people that have the contract now are not the ones that are going to be having the contract in the future, so to speak. So do you get what I'm getting at? Like at the top of the game, I think we talked about it's going to transfer to somebody else, or the and/or signs and so forth. So it seems to me like you guys are saying, hey, we want to get going on it. And yeah, we'll make sure that nothing is, I know it's not going to be built tomorrow or even in probably 2 years totally, hopefully, maybe. But it's that still doesn't answer the question about what are we doing to get?
Yeah. So great question. Let me just explain in the abstract kind of a parallel process that's taking place in the private market. So there's a current owner of the land. They're trying to sell the property. There's a buyer who's trying to purchase the property for development of affordable housing in this particular case. And before they actually, agree on and actually, make that transaction happen, that buyer has to know that steps A through Z are okay. They have to have absolute clarity that they can move forward with the buildings that they have approved. And so this step before you this evening is one of the many steps that they need to occur before they go through and follow through and purchase the property. Meanwhile, they're working on financing, they're working on stormwater engineering, they're working on a multitude of things to make sure that they know everything is ready to go by the time they actually purchase the property, and that they're not going to purchase the property and all of a sudden figure out that they're unable to construct what has been approved. So that's what that sale of the land, has not occurred yet, and that is also something that's really common in most redevelopment projects throughout the city.
And by the way, I'm going to tell you what I've done. I've walked the land, I met with the developers, I met with the neighborhood, met with researchers, asked a lot of questions, looked over at what happened over at East Washington over time, have even been schooled on, for example, landfill. I can't remember, it's Demetril or something like that, park that's over in my district. All the reason that the trees all sit on the outside is because you can't grow trees on the inside, because if you puncture, you puncture the the seal, it'll contaminate the entire neighborhood, okay? So I'm like, again, I'm very basic, but I get that. But do we have to have the language in there authorizing construction? Is that for loan purposes, or what my constituents want is they want clarity that it's not going to just be circled back through the departments, that we're going to take responsibility for it. Because when I hear it from all sides, and I'm new to it, and I'm pro everybody, is that it's coming down to somebody in a certain department that doesn't even have the qualifications to make it, and that's not you, because it's somebody else. But they're trying to say, like, we don't want to get in a situation where this is approved, authorizing construction to be undertaken by the developer. Private contract, that's what it says, authorized construction. So then later on, I have a heart attack, I die, right? And then they say, oh, well, we're authorized to do it. We can do the construction. So can somebody clarify that for me?
Yep. One other piece of that is that private contract number 9284. And part of that private contract are some of those conditions that Director Stouter was just mentioning too, with the requirement of the developer to have that material management plan approved by the DNR and submitted to our hydrogeologist for approval before they commence that construction. So that's part of the contract for the private development work.
So is there a way for us to go to put all people together so we all can get on the same page? I know that the groups have been asking for, contracts and all of that, and there wasn't anybody in the district, and then Alder Vetter was there, and then here's Amani. I mean, really, is there any way we can just, defer this for a bit so that we can get all parties together and come to some consensus so we don't have to have this battle for the next 2 years?
Alder, I think that's a rhetorical question. But if you'd like to talk further with either the city engineer or the planning director, I'm sure they can advise you as to what other alders have done in similar circumstances in the past. Alder Wahilahi. Questions for staff?
Yes, and this is for Heather. So we received a lot of calls saying that the area is contaminated and we shouldn't have any development in place. And you have alluded or shared the process that this is not a done deal. And, there will be a lot of more vigorous process in terms of looking into those contamination. What if the land becomes very contaminated? What's the options for the constituents? Because now they are tied into developing this area, the developer, but then also the constituents. So I'm just wondering, what if that area is really contaminated?
I'm not sure I understand the question fully. So the land is contaminated, as is most land being redeveloped in the city of Madison. It's a relatively minor level of contamination that's easily dealt with through redevelopment. So I think that the best path forward economically for this piece of land to be cleaned, or for, the contamination in the soil to be covered and residents protected, is for redevelopment of some sort to occur on the property. And so the cleanup happens as the redevelopment occurs, if that makes sense. If there's no driver, if there's no economic driver for the site to be cleaned up, then it will likely sit as is, as long as that's the case.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Rummel.
Thank you, Mayor. So to kind of follow up with Alder Amani's question, so if we went and approved the plans and specs, does it mean anything happens right away? And I guess my underlying question is, don't we need to hear from the DNR before you could even build roads and fill in like this skeletal outline that's in these plans?
So, Director Stouter and/or Engineer Wolf, can you clarify the timing of the infrastructure construction relative to the building construction?
I'll take a stab at that and say that once the conditions are met, once the site is shown to be a clean site, they could choose to do the street improvement and the building at the same time. The developer could, it's not necessarily that there has to be, that the building has to start first and then the street. They can look at their own construction timelines and choose which one would work best for them as a whole. But I think what Director Wolf has said is that they need to meet a materials management plan before the street construction starts. And before the building construction starts, they will need to provide to the city an approved cleanup plan from the Wisconsin DNR. And so both the construction of the building and the street come with conditions of approval that are going to provide the city and our residents with the assurance that the site is cleaned up as part of the redevelopment occurring.
Thank you. That answered my question.
Thank you, Alder. I have no other alders in the queue with questions. So the motion before us is to adopt. Is there discussion? Seeing no discussion, the motion is to adopt. Is there objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of adoption? Alder Latimer Burris?
I object.
Would you like to be recorded as voting no, or are you asking for a roll call?
I'll ask for a roll call.
A roll call has been requested on item 62. The motion is to adopt. All those in favor, aye. Those opposed, no, as your name is called, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Alder Evers? Aye. Alder Field? Aye. Vice President Figueroa Cole? Aye. Alder Govindarajan? Aye. Alder Harrington McKinney is excused. Alder Knox? No. Alder Latimer Burris? No. Alder Madison? Aye. Alder Martinez Rutherford? Aye. Alder Mayadzi? Aye. Alder Rummel? Aye. Alder Slack? Aye. Alder Tischler? Aye. Alder Vivier? Aye. Alder Vidavir? Aye. Alder Wahalier? No. Alder Bennett? Aye. Alder Conklin? Aye. President Curry? Aye. Alder Duncan? Aye. Madam Mayor, I have 16 ayes and 3 noes.
With 16 ayes, that item passes. And we will move on to item 76. Item 76 is Legistar 77544, Alder Vitiver.
Break, please.
Alder Vitiver moves a 10-minute break. Is there a second? Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of taking a 10-minute break? Seeing no objection, we'll be back at 8:54. We're 2 minutes out, folks. 2 minutes out. Okay, folks, we're past 10 minutes. If I can have the alders back in their seats, please. One, two, three. 7, 8, 9, 10. We need one more. Don't walk out of the room, Charles. If I could have alders return to their seats, please. Alder Martinez Rutherford, Alder Govindarajan, Alder Slack, Alder Vahili, Alder Figueroa. All right. I will call the meeting back to order, and I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Alder Evers. Alder Evers. Alder Evers is present. Alder Field. Alder Field is present. Vice President Figueroa Cole. Vice President Figueroa Cole is present. Alder Govindarajan. Alder Govindarajan is present. Alder Harrington McKinney is excused. Alder Knox. Alder Knox is present. Alder Latimer Burris. come back. Alder Madison? Alder Madison is present. Alder Martinez Rutherford? Alder Martinez Rutherford is here. Alder Mayadze? Alder Mayadze is present. Alder Rummel? Alder Rummel is present. Alder Slack? Alder Slack is present. Alder Tischler? Alder Tischler is present. Alder Revere? Alder Revere is present. Alder Vidavere? Alder Vidavere is present. Alder Wehelia? Alder Wehelia is present. Alder Bennett? Alder Bennett is present. Alder Conklin? Alder Conklin is present. President Curry? President Curry is present. Alder Duncan? Alder Duncan is present. And Alder Latimer Burris? Alder Latimer Burris is present. Madam Mayor, we have quorum.
Thank you. Alder Knox, you had rung in just before the break?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Thank you, Alder. All right, so we are on to item 76. President Curry.
Move to adopt.
Is there a second? Thank you. Moved and seconded to adopt. Item 76 is Legistar 77544, approving a loan of up to the YWCA Madison from Community Facilities Loan Program to help finance the rehab of programming space on Park Street. It's been moved and seconded. Are there questions for staff on item 76? Alder Knox.
Yeah, I did have quite a few questions on this. I am a sponsor of the motion, but in the interest of time, I'm going to apologize to my colleagues. I'm going to ask my questions to staff outside of this process, but I did have questions related to, one, what the terms of the loan is, to just knowing a little bit more about the program itself, and then also, the payment schedule. Do we wait to the end? Do we have loan forgiveness? All of those types of questions. But I really am one of those people that think you should do your homework, ask those questions ahead of time, and not do it on the floor. So I'm going to just beg off at this point and let the motion carry.
Thank you, Alder Knox. We collectively appreciate it, and I'm sure that a community development staff would be happy to answer those questions for you. Are there any other questions or discussion on item 76? Seeing none, is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor, noting that Alder Curry is recused on the item? Seeing no objection, we'll record that vote, and that item is adopted. That will bring us to item 90. Item 90 is Legistar 76311, a substitute amending portions of the Madison General Ordinances relating to the regulation of mobile home parks. President Curry?
Move to adopt the substitute.
Moved and seconded to adopt the sub. Are there questions on item 90? Alder Wehelia.
So I sent some questions to Alder Bennett and Attorney Haas. Let me see the questions. It was a very busy day, so I didn't get a chance to connect with them. So I did send the questions. Let me find.
Attorney Haas, do you have the Alder's questions?
Yes.
If you don't mind, I can find it. Yeah. Oh, here it is. Yeah. So based on the clarification or the substitute, I was wondering if Attorney Haas could clarify the legal aspect from the state perspective, and then I will ask the second question to the planning and the economic development.
Sure. Thank you, Alder. Our office requested that this be re-referred at a prior meeting so that we could draft a substitute, because in reviewing the original version, we discovered that there was just one provision that conflicted with state law. And so the only thing this substitute does is remove a provision stating that the mobile home park operator needs to provide 120 days notice to tenants before implementing a rental increase. The state statute limits that to 30 days, so we cannot go beyond that. So the substitute removes that provision, meaning we default then to what's in the state law, which is the 30-day requirement. As you probably know, the Landlord Tenant Issues Committee, that was re-referred to that committee. They did not meet because of lack of quorum. They had recommended the previous version be approved. The chair of that committee did communicate to the sponsor that they had no objection to the substitute.
Thank you, Attorney Haas. And my other question is, in one of the clause says different departments, city clerk, planning, economic, and community development will designate a staff to handle issues related to licensing and enforcement. Are there any budget implication to the city, and who is going to take in charge of implementing those enforcement license and any complaints?
Well, as far as the the ordinance, it is changing or adding conditions to the already existing licensing program. So those licenses run through the clerk's office. Their staff handles those licenses. As far as enforcement, I wasn't at the discussion at the Landlord Tenant Issues Committee originally, but apparently they were comfortable that their staff was adequate to implement and enforce the ordinance.
Mm-hmm. And the reason why I thought that question is, each department will allocate or have a designated staff. Does that mean each department will have their own staff to administer the enforcement?
Yeah.
If you look at the line 20, that's
right,
how it explains.
I mean, that's correct. I'm not familiar, to be honest, what the role is of planning and economic development, but maybe they might be able to answer.
Mr. Tucker, I think, can speak to that.
Sure, I can try. So oftentimes we will have staff that will coordinate different enforcement activities. We have people that are kind of more in a management role, then we have people that have badge numbers that are allowed to issue citations. So what we're talking about here is probably having someone that's in more of an overview role or kind of like a key person that would be working on the implementation of this this ordinance and other things related to the city's regulations for mobile home parks. And that person would then in turn be connecting with others within the department that have a more substantial role.
Okay. And that means there will not be a budget implication for any department, correct?
Nope, this is absorbed within the staff that we have in the city.
Okay. My last one is affordability, and also if Park Commission or Plan Commission were involved in this ordinance.
Well, although while this relates to mobile home parks, it does not actually relate to parks. I believe we maybe only have one mobile home park in the city, one or two?
Now 3.
3, okay. So there was no referral to the Park Commission or no referral to the Plan Commission originally.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alder Knox.
So for in terms of the state law and then what we're doing, it's a big difference, the 180 days to move their trailers, or is that the main difference once you eliminate the 120 days?
So the other provisions that are being added are not preempted under state law. We're
Okay.
allowed to have
Got
those
it.
provisions.
So some of my questions were, what's the likelihood that the association, which probably will be renters and homeowners, would buy the park, would have first shot at buying the park? I would assume that would be a significant amount. I don't know if there's been any surveying or research on what the cost would likely be. I don't think we can know that, but certainly what's the average income of the association members that they could actually do what we're kind of proposing that they can do by right. Does anybody have any kind of data? Does staff have any kind of data or information related to that?
Right, not that I know, but I wasn't at the committee discussion. I don't know if the sponsor has any information about that or not.
I don't know if the
We can, when we get into conversation, but Alder, I can tell you that I am aware that in other cities this has happened, where the residents have been able to purchase, to organize to purchase a park, and that there in fact are nonprofits nationally that help tenants organize to do so.
Okay, and then I think the author answered the question to me because I was saying, did anybody actually talk to the mobile home residents and say, this is what they want? You know, so that's my other question. Anybody know?
Yeah, if the sponsor wishes to speak to it, she can during discussion. Thank you, Alder. Alder Miadze?
Yeah, as an alder that has a mobile home park in the district, that was another concern of mine about not having community engagement, especially since that land and tenant issue committee was not met because of quorum. So community engagement is huge.
Is there a question, Alder?
That was a question. If there was a
Just to clarify, the committee did discuss the original version and recommended that. So it's only this one little piece in the substitute that they did not discuss, which we really don't have an option to include in the ordinance.
Okay, thank you, Alder. Alder Conklin?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say, because I'm a part of this committee as well, that what we're trying to do is make it so it's more favorable for the tenants and not make it so it's more favorable or profitable for the landlords. So in the discussion of when we added the part in there that we would give the tenants the opportunity to have them, be asked if they want to take over the property, we just, it's not that it's mandatory or anything, but we want to at least give them the chance to run the mobile home park that they've lived at instead of, turning it over to someone that doesn't know the property or doesn't know the tenants and things like that. So I just wanted to speak on that part of how we kind of came to adding that in there, is just to at least give them, the tenants, a chance to remain where they're at and keep their homes there. So.
Thank you, Alder. It appears we have run through questions and are into discussion now. Alder Bennett.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I know that the committee had been working on this for quite a long time in the Landlord Tenant Issues Committee. And just overall, the committee struggles because we are preempted by the state on like most things that we can do for tenants. So this is like one of the kind of creative things that we've kind of come up with. And we're glad that it will help that concern that we're hearing, about having to pick up and move at the drop of a hat. So that's why we have this in front of us, and it was all done in like with tenants at front and center in mind, and trying to claw back just a little bit of that control that we might not have.
Thank you, Alder. I have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak at this time. It's been moved and seconded to adopt. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, that item is adopted. And we will move on to item number 92. Item 92 is Legistar 77441, adopting the final report of the Task Force on Farmland Preservation. President Curry, a motion, please.
Move to adopt.
Or second? Moved and seconded to adopt. Are there questions on item 92? Alder Evers.
Yeah, is ACA Kate Smith available? If not, would you be able to?
Don't think so. You can have Laura Manella, or you can have the city attorney.
I'll go with the city attorney.
Second choice.
I would rather have ACA Smith, but no.
I understand.
I assume, Mike, you've seen the Assistant City Attorney's memo that was included in Legistar and sent out to alders, is that correct?
Are you talking about?
It's regarding on the action on solitary reports.
Right, correct, yes.
Are you familiar with what council did in terms of removing the distinctions between acceptance and adopting? Could you explain that briefly, please?
Sure. Thank you, Alder. As you recall, the council recently amended ordinance 2.27 to try to remove some confusion that existed about actions to accept a report versus adopt a report. The bottom line is really, at this point, there is no difference. Accepting the report or adopting the report is merely an action of the council to acknowledge that a report that it requested has been completed. It's an opportunity to thank the body who created it. But the change in the ordinance requires any action taken as a result of recommendations of the report has to either be specifically included in the resolution accepting the report or accomplished under a separate resolution or ordinance. So tonight's action before the council is simply adopting the final report of the task force. As I said, it's merely acknowledging that the report has been completed. Any recommendations or policy changes would have to be taken up separately by the council.
As a follow-up, it sounds like then this is pro forma, almost automatic, that if we agree that the work that was assigned to the task force was completed, it would behoove us then to acknowledge so by voting in favor.
And as Attorney Smith's memo, I think, indicates, one reason not to accept the report is if the council thought the body did not complete the assignment that it was given and it wanted to send it back for further work. Otherwise, I would agree it's pretty much a formality.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Slack?
Yeah, so I do think the language matters, and adopting is different than accepting, just in the definition of those two words. And for the purposes of the public watching what we're doing, adopting does sound like we're going to be moving and taking action on these items. And as Alder Evers knows, I have reached out to him to express my support for this, and that I have questions about it, but that I am in support and want to work with him and others on this. But I think it is confusing, to residents. It sure was to me, but and still is, but it was to me before joining this body. Adopt does sound more official. I'm fine voting to adopt this. I recognize all the work that went into this. I appreciate all the work that went into this. I like most of what's here and just have some lack of clarity on a few things. But if people are okay with changing it from adopt to accept, that would make me feel better.
If I could just add one other, I agree, Alder, as far as sort of what the general public might think as far as what those definitions are, but the ordinance does specifically state a motion to adopt or accept or place on file does not constitute or imply agreement or disagreement with the report, findings, or recommendations, and such motions do not constitute adoption or rejection of any recommendations as city policy. And the reason that was important was because previously adoption meant the council was adopting those as policy statements and telling staff go forth and implement. But that is no longer the case under the ordinance.
Alder?
So this may just be something to press later on that particular ordinance. I'm going to vote just to adopt or accept it either way, but I do think it's a minor change that would reduce confusion among our constituents.
Thank you, Alder. Feel free to take it up with the city attorney and to address the ordinance. On the substance, Alder Figueroa Cole?
Oh, I didn't realize I pushed the button.
No.
Are we in discussion or are we
We
still
are.
in the questions?
We are wherever you would like to be, Alder.
Okay, I just want to quickly say, because I wanted to do this for the Parks Commission and Ronaldo, the battery went out on me at the moment. Just want to thank the committee for all the work on these policy or on these suggestions. So I know that I was part from the beginning on how the subcommittee was assembled. So I am so excited to see that they were so, in such a speed to put this together. So my appreciation to everyone that worked so hard on it. And again, I'm a sponsor of it, so obviously I'm going to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Govindarajan.
I wrote things down so I won't mess it up. I will be voting in favor of adopting this final report of the Farmland Preservation Task Force because a lot of hard work has gone into it from many people. They've truly done a splendid job completing the task given to them, and I want to thank them for the work they did here. However, I want to speak to the contents of the report first in the case that council chooses to act on any of these recommendations. I think it's important to recognize the viewpoints that was brought here by this report. These recommendations call for protecting the some 200 acres of land within the city due to the fierce competition for the land, even though Dane County itself has thousands of acres available as well. Much of this competitive land is also where affordable housing developments take place. Duplexes and other multi-unit housing take place here. I don't want to completely cut that off. I want to still have the ability for these developments to take place. Though this resolution helps further protect community farms, I don't know if it's necessary since many real community farms are already protected through existing zoning ordinances. It's also important to note that nationwide, small farms tend to be on a decline and have been for decades. Overall, the viewpoints brought forward by this resolution seem to be one-sided. Though it's a win for sustainability efforts, which I applaud, it lacks viewpoints of long-term city expansion, affordable housing, and more. I will be voting in favor of this resolution to accept the report, however, holistically disagree with some of its recommendations. I just wanted to be clear that most of these recommendations are great, but require further discussion, and I hope that council will engage in those discussions with different lenses if we choose to work on these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Wahilahi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Based on Alder Slack and Alder MGR, I cannot say your last name, so sorry. I'm a little bit confused as to if we adopt, are we locked in? And there are other reports that are on the agenda to be accepted. So for the sake of consistency, can we make the motion to accept rather than to adopt?
Alder, there's no material difference between the two. You are adopting the report.
Mm-hmm.
All it means is that you're saying thank you to the task force for their work, and we have received the report.
And accepting is the same?
Same thing. No difference. Alder Latimer Burris?
Yeah, so I'm glad that Alder Slack asked that question, because for 92, 93, 94, for me, it's all about language, because I guess it's like, in litigation, you learn that the war is won in words. So maybe that's something that we can look at in the future. What's the difference between adopting, accepting resolution? I accept that Attorney Haas says that it's all plain language. It's all there. This is a growing process and a learning process, and I'm glad that we're asking a lot of questions. And I know everybody's tired.
You, Alder? I have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak. The motion is to adopt item 92. Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor. Item 92, and move on to item 93, which is Legistar 77479, accepting the report titled Comprehensive Plan 2023 Progress Update. And I believe we have a staff presentation on this. Yes, Kirsty Latch is here. Go ahead, Kirsty.
Thank you. Good evening, Common Council. I'm going to share my screen and start a report presentation. Looks like host. I'm not able to share my screen. My apologies. Is there a tech issue that I need to address?
Can our tech staff allow screen sharing?
It says it's disabled.
Or can you send your...
Yep. So you should be able to screen share.
Perfect. Yes, it is working now. All right. Are you able to see the full screen slides?
We are.
Thank you so much. I'll try to be brief. So my name is Kirsty Latch. My pronouns are they, them, their, and I work in the city's planning division. I'm going to present on the 4th annual progress update for the comprehensive plan. Just to really quickly start off here, I wanted to distinguish this item from the next item on the agenda. Item 94 on tonight's agenda, which is the interim update to the comprehensive plan. That item focuses on making some limited revisions to the comprehensive plan, while this one is focusing on the annual report, essentially the progress update. So for this report, the planning division coordinates with about 30 staff across city agencies on this interagency effort. And the report highlights implementation of the comprehensive plan. So a little bit of background on what the comprehensive plan is. So Wisconsin state law requires cities to have a comprehensive plan, and that state law outlines the topics that must be included. And in short, the comprehensive plan is a long-term vision for the future of Madison to help guide the growth and change that Madison is experiencing. So if you're not familiar, the plan includes 7 elements and covers topics like land use, transportation, housing, and so on. And the plan itself was adopted in August 2018 after more than 18 months of community engagement. A little bit more about that engagement. So the plan is the culmination of rather extensive public participation to find out what matters most to residents and pull all of that feedback together into recommendations in the comprehensive plan. So for this effort, one thing I wanted to highlight is that the city partnered with community leaders and community organizations to establish resident panels, which function sort of like focus groups. And those resident panels were comprised of residents from typically underrepresented groups, including BIPOC folks, youth, people living with lower incomes, and others. But the resident panels provided critical feedback and overall guidance to inform the recommendations within the comprehensive plan. So during the Imagine Madison process, we received feedback from the community, incorporated that into the plan, and the city's been working on implementation for a few years. And it's important for us to report out on what's been accomplished and close that feedback loop with the community. And we do that through this annual progress update. We try to keep these annual reports relatively concise so that they're accessible to a wider audience. So we focus on covering the major highlights each year. This is our 4th annual progress update. So, I've got, just a little view of the covers of our previous versions, but we're going to be focusing on the 2023 progress update for this item. So the 2023 edition highlights implementation examples and projects from the 2022 calendar year. It's organized by the 7 elements of the comprehensive plan. And this year, this edition includes the health and safety element for the first time. That was adopted by the Common Council in 2022 after a year-long process to develop those recommendations. And by adding in the health and safety element, the plan now better reflects the work of several agencies that were a little bit less represented in the comprehensive plan previously. Yeah, we're now reflecting a wider range of city services and initiatives with that addition. So very briefly walk through the draft report, probably even more brief than I had intended. But each of the 7 elements includes a spotlight regarding a major project in which we made progress during 2022. So for the land use and transportation element, we cover the Metro Transit network redesign. And each of the elements also has approximately 8 brief summaries of other implementation highlights. So a couple of those in the land use and transportation section are complete green streets, transit-oriented development overlay, TDM, and then we also cover in this section of the report a look at our infill versus edge development. And one key aspect of the comprehensive plan was that the community told us that their preferred growth scenario was to accommodate a majority of our growth through infill and redevelopment, rather than growth around the edge of the city in undeveloped areas. So in 2022, we issued permits for about 2,300 new housing units, and of those, about 73% were located in infill and redevelopment areas, generally within the Beltline, quite broadly there. But only about 27% of those were located in edge development areas. And so we're sort of meeting that broad goal to accommodate a majority of our growth through infill and redevelopment. And these figures were the highest percentage of infill and redevelopment that we've had in recent years. Each element also includes a table that tracks the status of the recommendations. I'm not going to cover this in detail. That would take a very long time, but I'll mention that we list the lead agencies and the status for each action in the plan. For the neighborhoods and housing section, the spotlight was on the rent abatement program improvements. Some of the other highlights include affordable housing fund for tax credit developments, locating the first purpose-built shelter and tenant protection against retaliation. There's some streamlined protections in that area. In the economy and opportunity section, we spotlight the Madison Forward Fund. And then some of the other highlights include the Community Facilities Loan Program, Building Improvement Grant, and setting aside more funding for the public market. In the culture and character section, we spotlight Parks Alive, which I'm sure a lot of you know about. It's a wonderful series of events across Madison. And then some of the other highlights are restored the Gates of Heaven building, repurposed the ballot boxes, and then also covered the National Endowment for the Arts program. In Green and Resilient, we spotlight the complete redesign of the former Glenway Golf Course, now the Glen Golf Park. And then some of the other highlights are more sustainability for projects funded through the Affordable Housing Fund and the tax credit program, a clean beach water system installed at Warner Park, and then we received a grant for funding all electric buses. In the effective government section, the spotlight is on this sustainability campus partnership. And some of the other highlights include an intergovernmental agreement with the town of Cottage Grove and the streets division making some improvements to the large item pickup program. And finally, in the health and safety element, we spotlight the expansion of the CARES program. And some of the other highlights include the Vision Zero Action Plan, some partnerships with the library, with the Ho Chunk Gaming to celebrate Indigenous people in the region, and public health's Narcan and fentanyl test strip kits. So that's a very brief summary there. I wanted to mention that we also have an interactive version of the comprehensive plan online. So after each progress update is published each year, we add the content from the reports into the interactive plan. So you can basically see the content from every progress update in one spot in our interactive comprehensive plan, and you can find that on the Planning Division's website on the comprehensive plan page. That concludes my presentation. Yeah, I'll hand it back over to President Curry.
Thank you very much. Are there questions for Kirsty? President Curry?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was a mistake.
Nope. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, then President Curry, a motion?
Move to adopt.
Moved and seconded to adopt. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, excuse me, I'm tired. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of item 93 and go on to item 94, which is Legistar 77810, adopting a public participation plan for the comprehensive plan interim update of 2023 and authorizing the Planning Division to draft amendments to the text and maps in the 2018 comprehensive plan. On item 94, President Curry, a motion, please.
Move to adopt.
Moved and seconded to adopt item 94. Are there questions on item 94? Or is there discussion on item 94? Alder Slack.
I just want to explain that I had pulled this from the consent agenda, but after discussing with Director Stouter and Principal Planner Brian Grady, my concerns were alleviated.
Thank you, Alder. Is there any other discussion on item 94? Seeing none, is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record unanimous vote in favor of item 94. That will take us to item 98, which is Legistar 77467, amending sections of the Madison General Ordinances regarding the advertising sign bank and replacement advertising signs, extending the sunset date for 8 years and making other minor procedural clarifications. Let's start with a motion. President Curry.
Move to adopt.
Moved and seconded to adopt. We do have staff here that can do a short presentation on this item, so we will start with that. Mr. Tucker?
Sure, thanks. If the technical folks could start the PowerPoint. So just a few slides here really quick. I know we're getting late into the night, but most of you folks were not on the City Council 8 years ago when this was originally put in, so I'm just going to walk you through it. Some basic concepts on, you can advance to the next slide. What is an advertising sign? Oftentimes people equate the term advertising sign with billboard. The two top photographs are what you conventionally might think of as an advertising sign. These are freestanding signs that are often two-sided on high traffic areas, identifying off-premise products and services. And the lower two photographs on the left is an advertising sign that's located on the wall of a building. And then in the lower right is an advertising sign that's located on the roof of a building. That's typically how we see them in one of those three configurations. Except since 1989, except for the for some lawsuit settlements that the city has been involved in, no new advertising signs have been constructed in the city. Signs can't be moved except for highway realignment type signs, like when they were widening the belt line, there was a sign that was shifted. It cannot be altered, only the copy can be changed. Also, signs may not be located on buildings that include residential dwelling units. You can go to the next slide, please. So this, what happened back in 2015? The City Council approved the sign banking ordinance. These are often referred to as cap and replace ordinances in the industry or in this type of regulation. This is not actually a true cap and replace ordinance. The interest at the time the City Council had was to allow for the banking of square footage of signs that were only located physically in the same space where a redevelopment building was going to be placed. So not taking down a sign at the interest of the sign's owner at any point in time, only when the sign was located in the same physical space. The ordinance allows the sign's square footage to be banked, whatever that may be. Then the ordinance allows that square footage to be spent within certain zoning districts that are allowable in the ordinance. Those places are a couple of the commercial zoning districts and a few of the employment zoning districts. No urban design districts, no residential districts, no downtown districts. Also, it's a 1-to-1 square foot banking, which means that they're not taking down a square foot and getting credit for 2, or taking down a square foot and getting credit for half, 1-to-1. There won't be any increase with this ordinance in square footage of advertising signs that exists in the city. However, there can be cases where a large sign could be taken down and smaller signs could be replaced as long as the square footage is equal. And you can go to the, and then in the last bullet point there, that this is a completely voluntary program. It's basically set up for property owners and sign owners to get together to negotiate the removal of signs for redevelopment. And next slide, please. So why did this get adopted? Advertising signs are located in places that the city is planning for redevelopment. They have rights to be there, and this is a tool by which the signs, because they're not allowed anywhere else in the city, could possibly be banked and rebuilt the square footage at other places. Without the signs going away, they have a chilling effect on redevelopment opportunities. And once again, it creates an opportunity for the sign owners to negotiate ending leases and maintain their square footage to make way for the redevelopment that the city is looking for. You can go on to the next slide. What are the benefits? It's basically removing the barrier to that a sign is to a redevelopment. The signs can be placed if they can find a location for them in the city otherwise. So that's the benefits to the owners of the signs. And the benefit to the city is that redevelopment can occur, tax base, new dwelling units that we need. And what we're finding also is the signs are removed from locations where they're most sensitive. Urban design districts, historic districts, those other places often where we see redevelopment. Next slide, please. So the amendment basically pushes out the sunset for another 8 years. It's an opportunity just to see how it's working for another 8 years, and we can report back at that time. It also includes some minor procedural-related changes, just because we went through some experience banking and removing signs, just to kind of clarify how that process goes. And then there was a special appeal that was added when this was first put forward in 2015 to have the council possibly review requests for banking, but none came forward during that time, and so that went away. And we're just carving that out because it's no longer relevant. On to the next slide. So this is a couple of I'm going to show you the examples that we had. These are the only examples that we've had of the banking occurring. This property, Lucky's 1313 in Regent Street. I think, Evers, this is in your district, Alder Evers. And you got, there were 3 sign faces that were removed. So 3 stories of residential could be built atop this building. This square footage is technically in their bank. It hasn't been spent at any location. When they find a location, they could present us a sign permit where they're allowed, and we could process it. And then this project, 2901 University Avenue, I think this is all in Alder District 5, and this was a single-story liquor store with some apartment buildings behind that had a two-sided advertising sign. That sign was taken down, and the 5-story mixed-use residential building was built. And the square footage for that sign was, I guess you could say, moved or rebuilt, if you will, with a new sign over on the West Beltline in front of the Portillo's hot dogs place and the Urban Air parking lot on the West Beltline on the frontage road. This one is similar size to the sign that was taken down. And I could answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions for staff on this item? Alder Bennett?
Yes, I'm realizing maybe this is a question for the speaker, but maybe you can answer it as well. I understand that there's some sort of philanthropic aspect to this as well. Would you be able to speak towards that at all? About
Well, I mean, we're aware, it's common knowledge that they have offered area on their signs over time to nonprofits, public arts, or other entities voluntarily.
Awesome. And given that this is, the sunset was 8 years, and now we're going out for another 8 years, which combined would be 16 years. Was there any thoughts about just removing the sunset clause? Because it seems like, it's gone on for quite a long time now. We know how this program is working.
Well, there have been some other matters that, I should say some other opportunities that the sign company has had, more than just this, to place signs. As I mentioned early in my presentation, outside of some settlements of some lawsuits, there have been no new signs, but the lawsuits that we settled, most recently the one from 2011's taxation lawsuit, afforded credits to the sign companies. And one of them just finished utilizing their 5 credits. So they hadn't really needed to go through much of experience under the 8 years of cap and replace. So I think part of the idea was just to continue to see how it goes and just, see if it's actually resulting in positive outcomes, redevelopment. Of course, the city council could choose to make this permanent if they wish, but our thought was it's probably a better bet just to kind of kick this out again when the table is more clear on signs coming down and new signs being replaced, to see if it is continuing to work as intended.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any other questions for staff, or is there any discussion? The motion is to adopt. Alder Figueroa Cole?
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple alders approached me as I was sponsoring this resolution with the concern of expanding this for another 8 years for future council members to tackle. So there is some interest on taking a closer look at the contract, the terms and conditions, and the feasibility of this policy. So I agree to put a motion forward to change the 8 years to a shorter term, so those people interested on working on those changes had the opportunity to address them and to have this council deal with them in 2 years from now, or about 2 years from now. So I'd like to put a motion forward to make an amendment. I sent the language out. The only changes done were to change the 8-year language to a fixed date of March 15, 2025. So I'd like to put that as an amendment to the current motion.
Alder Figueroa Cole moves an amendment that would give us a fixed end date in 2025. Is there a second? It's moved and seconded, so that amendment is before us. Are there questions? I believe the alder did send the language around. Did you send it to the city attorney and the clerk as well?
I did.
Thank you. Alder Evers.
Yeah, perhaps the alder from the 10th could explain what would keep alders from working on this and submitting an amendment at a later date, regardless of whether we change the sunset date now or leave it as is, so 8 years. It seems to me that if alders want to work on this, they could work on this and then come back and propose an amendment, at which time we can address any changes that need to be made. But I'm not sure, after staff and committees have made recommendations before us, I don't know that there's a good reason necessarily to change it to 2 from 8. Simply because alders want to work on this more.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Slack?
Well, similarly, without knowing what the concerns are, it's hard to know how to think about that amendment.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Rummel?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess the time seems right, Alder, because it's up for renewal. It would have sunset. We would have ended this pilot, or whatever you want to call this, 8-year term. So I think now's the perfect time. It will expire. And really, if you look back at the really interesting billboard cap and replace history that's in this Legistar item, the Common Council, starting in the late 1970s, decided that we should eliminate billboards from our city. And so this is a 40-year process that we have been involved in, and I personally was involved in 2015. I just want to remind everyone that currently existing billboards are non-conforming, permitted to only be in certain zoning districts. You can only move and relocate them using this sunset provision to realign, but basically they're not permitted. We say no to billboards, except we created this way to slowly get rid of them. And I think in the staff presentation, you're seeing that in 8 years, 2 sets of buildings have been redeveloped with this ordinance cap and replace. And I guess and if you read into the MGO 31.112, you would see that these new constructed structures can stay up for 50 years. So I know that's not part of the amendment, in which I'm supporting, but I really do believe that if we really believe they should go away, this 2-year proposal seems like a good way to move forward and not adding 8 more years. Thank you.
Alder Figueroa Cole?
Well, I just want to address Alder Evers' question and perhaps just kind of pass it on to Attorney Haas. I mean, if we agree to a 1-year contract, am I going to be able to come back in 2 years and say the contract is out? Or can we just extend it at a time?
Okay. I think that's a question for Assistant City Attorney Laura Manella.
Oh, well, yeah.
Laura, if you're still here.
March 15, 2025, right before the election.
Laura, the Alder's question is regarding the 8-year versus 2-year sunset question, and whether if we adopt the 8-year, an additional 8 years before sunset, whether alders could come back and change, sort of re-amend this program.
Okay, and thank you. And re-amend it to reduce the duration to something less than 8 years? Is that the question?
We haven't heard what the potential amendments would be, but there's the question on the floor is whether we should sunset in 2025 or after 8 years. And the question that was initially asked by Alder Evers, I believe, was why do we not just adopt the 8-year sunset, and then alders who wish to amend the the whole program could continue to work on that amendment and bring it forward at any time. And so I think what Alder Figueroa Cole is asking is it possible if we extend the sunset for alders to amend the underlying ordinance?
Okay, thank you. And yes, the answer is yes. This ordinance is really no different from any other city ordinance. And as you all know, changes are frequently made to the city ordinances. So it's not a contract. There is no contractual obligation that the city is making to any billboard company. This ordinance applies to anyone who owns a billboard and wants to avail itself of this procedure. So yes, if it gets extended for a period of 8 years, that doesn't mean that policymakers can't go back during that 8 years and explore other changes to this ordinance.
They changed the term of the 8 years in 2 years after we approve today.
I'm sorry.
So
Say that again?
can we kill the sunset or the sunset period in 2 years after if we approve it today for 8?
If you approve it today for 8, and then do you want to shorten it to something less than 8 after that?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
You could. Yes, you could. It might raise some. Yes, you could.
So I mean, again, I'm just going to leave it up there for just putting this forward for the people that want to work on it, and you guys decide which way you want to go with it.
Thank you, Alder.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or discussion on the amendment? Alder Rummel?
One more comment I would like to make for you to think about. We're often asked to look at our consistency, et cetera. I just want you to think to yourselves, how many other businesses do you know about that can utilize a lease to create the ability to continue uses that are not permitted and are allowed to impose delays for the redevelopment of property? If there are businesses that have that ability, please raise them here on the floor. But I wonder if you'll find any. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Bennett?
Yes, I'm just looking to understand better. Are there, what, if any, are the delays to development or, possible additional development costs that may result from the need to remove and move and replace one of these signs?
Mr. Tucker?
Sure, I'll just point out one of those examples. The Lucky's 1313 project had 3 signs on the roof, and the owners of that project wanted to proceed in 2015 with that residential project. And the company had a lease for those signs that had 7 years remaining. And they, what was shared with us was that they were not interested in ending that lease. And so that project had to wait until the signs lease terminated for the signs to be taken down so the project could proceed. So they saw a 7-year delay.
Additional?
And, how many other projects in Madison could experience like something similar?
It's hard to say because there are cases where the signs come down and are just simply not renewed, and we're not part of those conversations because it just happens. People, developers may work it out completely on their own. This is a private lease relationship between a property owner and their tenant in many cases. We don't have good data, and it's all over the board. I'm aware of probably maybe a half dozen projects that have signs on the properties that have been in various states of discussion with our office about development, and we just wait for the matter to be resolved, however it gets resolved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Slack.
Okay, so I'm confused about something. So if we vote not to extend the sunset, what happens? Won't the leases just preempt anything else at that point? At least with the cap and replace, there's more of an opportunity to proceed with development if negotiations allow for moving the signs. So what happens if we don't approve the extension of the sunset?
So if you don't approve the extension of the sunset, the program ends. This ordinance goes away, and there is no longer a cap and replace ordinance in our sign code for allowing for the removal of advertising signs that the billboard company has said that they will not take down without something like this. Generally speaking, they speak for themselves, I would say. They also have, I don't know, maybe, I'm not sure exactly how many hundred, maybe 800 or 1,000 square feet in their bank right now that they would not be able to utilize anymore. These are existing signs that were taken down, and they haven't built new signs yet. And if it isn't approved, if it's not extended today, I mean, this is the last meeting. This is it. The sunset arrives on the 24th of June.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah.
It just seems to me like the cap and replace gives us a tool to be able to proceed with development projects that we will no longer have if it expires.
That's correct. That's why it was adopted. Was to create an opportunity. You had said something earlier about leases. It has nothing to do with the leases. That's not our arrangement. We have nothing to do with the leases. We just have this ordinance that would allow for the square footage to be banked and spent somewhere else, which is an incentive to having a sign be removed potentially.
Thank you, Alder Latimer Burris.
Yeah, so I met with Adams, the sign company, and asked a lot of questions, for about a good hour, just drilled them. And so I think that there's a history, and what we're missing is that in 2015, as I understand it, and maybe Adams can come and speak on this, is that is how the banking ordinance got put in place. I didn't understand what was going on, but after having conversation with them, I not only support this, but also signed myself in as a sponsor, because the other side of it is it's shutting down business ultimately, and it would put the city, as far as I can see, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, it could put us back in litigation and not going anywhere. So this is a way to get developments to go forward. And I think it helps sometimes when we make decisions, if we're allowed to meet with people, of course we are, and ask a lot of questions, ask the dumb questions, the long questions, so that we can get down to it. Because I think that this was negotiated in 2015, right? The banking program. And it grew out of conflict, right?
So yeah, the billboard company indicated that they were not going to voluntarily remove signs. They were very upfront that they would be an obvious obstacle to redevelopment the city wanted to see, which is why the city council decided to adopt this policy. And but don't the whether or not there's litigation between the city and this company has nothing to do with this ordinance. So if any of the city attorneys want to say anything about that, that's probably more in their area.
I don't mean to suggest that they're going to get in litigation. What I mean to suggest is that, like Alder Rummel had said, there's a long history, and at some point we decided that we didn't. The city didn't want to have signs, and then also the other effect, the other unintended or maybe intended consequences that you have a sign company that's out of business, because if you can't build any more signs, you can't put any more signs up, whether we like them or not. They're out of business. And so that, I understand that it's working better now. the parties are able to work together and get some consensus, and they unfortunately are not allowed to grow anymore, but they're allowed to do banking. But if we don't do anything tonight, it's going to, they have the right to not do anything and stop development. And so, as I understand, maybe I'm not understanding completely, but I think that's the end game. So it's not, I'm not suggesting, I don't want to raise litigation to suggest that that's what's going to happen. I'm just saying it's complicated. And right now, if we don't do anything, then, for example, in my district, if one of the developers wants to come in and put up a building, and the sign company decides, we go into the sunset clause, and they decide, well, we're not going to move the billboard. I mean, that's just going to be a hot mess. Simply speaking.
Alder Govindarajan.
Hi, so I might be just a little bit confused. I'm hearing a little bit of that it promotes development, but also that it delays development. Can I have a little bit of clarification on that?
Sure. So the signs are in the way of redevelopment. Then the signs sit in leases. So if the company is able to bank the square footage of the sign can be taken down and the redevelopment can proceed. But if the sign isn't taken down, like that example I gave of Lucky's 1313, it was an obstacle to that redevelopment. It stalled that project, or had the ordinance been in place at the time that project originally started, maybe could have proceeded sooner. So it all depends on what side regulation you're on.
Alder Bennett?
Thank you again so much, Mayor, for patience. Just to clarify too, so this ordinance, it does not impact the lease agreement, right? Like, so with Lucky's 1313, the property had an existing lease, and regardless of like if we had this or if we didn't have this, it wouldn't have mattered. Like the lease would still have had to go through the 7-year period and expired.
I mean, correct, but the potential could have been, had the ordinance not been in place, what would be the incentive for the company to take the signs down early? Nothing.
So the incentive, I see. So like the incentive, so without it, I get it, never mind. I'm sorry, I can't repeat it back, but
yeah, it's
it's
a little
in my
tricky.
mind.
Yeah.
Sorry. I just wanted to say, like, I think that, like, I think it would be good, maybe for Urban Design Commission, if they really wanted to check this out, that they should go ahead and do that. But I don't see the difference between, the timeline here when Urban Design Commission can take this up at any time that they want to. And I think it's more beneficial for us to just proceed with the course that was already set and allow others to take it up as they please.
Thank you, Alder Govindarajan, for the second time.
Sorry, again. So if we wanted to, let's say my goal is to promote student housing, hypothetically, and there's a billboard in the way stopping that, or like there is just a billboard, would you say that it's better to extend the sunset so the billboard stays, or to get rid of the sunset and just prohibit billboards from being built for the goal of student housing? I don't know.
It's not about that. So no new billboards can be built. You're just moving square footage around. The only thing this does is create a potential opportunity for that square footage to be banked and built somewhere else. So say student housing, most of the student housing projects are down in Regent Street or University Avenue, and there's some signs there. And they may be in long-term leases. And so the possibility exists that they can't work out a deal to bank the square footage of that sign, even though this ordinance exists. and then the project doesn't move forward. But this is something that's there that potentially allows for the signs to be banked and the sites to be redeveloped. It's just a tool.
Thank you, Alder. We have no other alders in the queue. What's before us is the amendment to sunset in 2025. So on that amendment, anticipating some disagreement, all those in favor of this, changing the sunset date to 2025, aye. Those opposed, no. As your name is called, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Alder Evers?
No.
Alder Evers is no. Alder Field? No. Vice President Figueroa Cole? Yes. Yes. Alder Govindarajan? No. Alder Harrington McKinney is excused. Alder Knox? No. Alder Latimer Burris? No. No. Alder Madison? Yes. Yes. Alder Martinez Rutherford? No. Alder Mayadzi? No. Alder Rummel? Aye. Aye. Alder Slack? No. Alder Tischler? No. No. Alder Revere? Aye. Aye. Alder Vidavere? No. No. Alder Wahalian? No. No. Alder Bennett? No. No. Alder Conklin? Yes. Aye. President Curry? No. Alder Duncan? No. No. Madam Mayor, I have 5 ayes and 14 noes.
14 noes, the amendment fails. We are back to the main motion, which is to amend the MGO with another 8 years before it sunsets and other minor clarifications. Is there further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of adoption? Alder Rummel?
I don't want to vote for it, no.
You'd like to be recorded as voting no?
Yes.
Alder Rummel will be recorded as voting no. Is there any other objection? Seeing no other objection, the item passes. And that brings us to the end of our agenda. Are there any items to be introduced from the floor? Seeing none, before we adjourn, I think many of you know this already, but we received news during the meeting that a longtime community activist and pillar of our community, Juan Jose Lopez, passed today. And so I'd like you all to just join me in a brief moment of silence in his honor. Thank you. Alder Evers, it's your turn. Is there a second? Moved and seconded to adjourn. Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of adjournment? Seeing no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good night.